Hartford Selectboard at 6 o'clock on September 30th, 2025. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there someone who'd like to lead that?
Sure.
Thanks, Scott.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have no local liquor control board business. We have no local cannabis control board business. So the next order is the order of agenda. And there is one change. John, you want to?
Sure. You got the email earlier. We're not, once again, we're not quite ready for our executive session. No big problems, but simply waiting for the other side to ratify a tentative agreement that we will then present to the board.
Thank you very much. Any other changes, deletions, additions to the agenda before we begin? Okay, so next is public comment. Remember that public comment's an opportunity for the public to comment. It's not the place for dialogue. No personal attacks. Address the board as a whole. And if you have specific questions about town operations, make sure that you address them in an email to our town manager. Thank you. All right, Peter, you want to introduce yourself? And
just wasn't sure if there's anybody that would like to go ahead.
you have 3 minutes.
All right, thanks for letting me go first. Yeah, Pete Sandron, White. No need to. Anyone in town knows me, and that's part of the reason for my comments tonight. Is what I'm speaking about. Some of you I emailed, and I also emailed Brandon, as this is something that Brandon would bring up regularly when he was on the select board. I mean, this morning was, not to toot my own horn, but was kicking ass in court, and mainly after learning that there has been surveillance of residents here in town. I mean, Brandon did suspect something the way Mohsen Madawi and others have been treated. But in viewing the reports that were used again from what happened in June, to me, as well as to what happened, I mean, to me personally, I know you said nothing personal, but this is how I was able to get this information. False information was obtained about me and used by the HPD. Now, there were only 2 sources they could have come from. One of them was the FBI. And in viewing the documents that the state's attorney and the courts had given me, information from the FBI, including much of it false information, is being used and disseminated by at least one member of the HPD. Now, I'm trying to keep it polite here, but this is something that's alarming. And when Brandon made his suggestion about, because I know we have the welcoming Hartford Ordinance and other ordinances touching on this issue of surveillance of residents, and the way certain people in businesses and people in government have been behaving in town. I mean, it does give suspicion, but after what I'd seen today, now I can say, because with what's been going on after Dartmouth with me and others involved in the protests, this is what I said about the last time. I've got the proof, nobody followed up, but after what we've seen today, this is happening here in town. And yes, I did email you, Madam Chair, and other members of the select board about this, so please do not hesitate to get in touch with me to follow up, because this is serious. Because, I mean, Madawi is someone who was naturalized and was targeted for going through the naturalization process simply for political beliefs. I'm a dual, someone born in Vermont but who holds dual status in another country. And this too is being used against me. And partly they couldn't even spell my name right on these documents. Another way we knew that. So please, I mean, if it can happen to me, it's happening to others. I mean, but at least I'm in a position to fight back and do something. Many who are we've got a protest happening in 2 weeks. How do we know some violence isn't gonna happen connected to that?
Thank you, Peter. All right. Other public comment at this point in time?
There's someone online.
All right, Miranda, thank you.
Marie, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Marie Alvin, Hartford Avenue. A couple of things I wanted to bring up, the drought. And I didn't know with the ongoing use and growth of water in Hartford, if selling water to Norwich, has anybody even thought about future drought? That's pretty much gonna happen, and just wanted to throw that out there to think about. Also, I was wondering, we used to get monthly reports from the police department as far as, where their calls have been in the village and what those calls have been for. I'm not sure what happened with that, but we do have a full-time data analyst now, and I would think that there shouldn't be any reason why we can't get a monthly report about what's going on in the town as far as our police force goes. And that leads me to the ordinance that I sent you, the ordinance at the Wilder Park and Ride that is not being enforced. I sent you all a photo of a vehicle. It's still there. It's been there for a month. I've also sent you a picture of the ordinance, 7-day limit. The car left for a day, came back, and it's been there about 30 days now. So I don't know what the issue is with getting those enforced. I assume the police department did it, but it doesn't appear that they do. And to me, it's a problem if you're not enforcing your ordinances. Why do we have an ordinance? And welcome back, John. I'm glad you're back. Hope you had a great trip, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Miranda? Okay, we will close public comment and then have select board comments and announcements. I'll start with Ashley.
Yes, I do have a select board announcement. I just wanted to remind folks about the invitation we were all sent for the Braver Angels event called Managing Difficult Conversations with Constituents. And I wanted to put in a plug for it because I've been to one of the Braver Angels events in the past. They did an event in Thetford that was just about having conversations with people from different political or religious or ideological beliefs and how to work through those hard conversations. And I think as public officials and elected officials, it's going to be a really helpful workshop on October 23rd. So I'll be there, and I hope that some of you guys can make it as well.
Thank you, Ashley. Tim?
I just want to, I guess had the unfortunate experience of watching the fire we experienced in town. And I was just really impressed with all the crews that worked to fight that fire and put it out. And I just want to thank them for that. So.
Mike?
Nothing from me, thanks.
All right, Ida?
No comments. Building off of what Tim just shared, I do want to also highlight that there is going to be a mutual aid fundraiser at the filling station for First Friday, with all the proceeds and donations going to the folks who are affected by the fire, but also, yeah, big shout out to our fire chief and fire staff for handling that, and also with the follow-up care of the people who were displaced.
Mayor?
Nothing tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I will just remind people, and Ida can back me up, there's a styrofoam gathering at Sykes Avenue, Mascoma Bank on Saturday, 9 to 11. All right, just wanted to make sure we all were aware of that.
Oh, and maybe Madam Chair,
Yes.
maybe a reminder about our event on Friday. Right, so this Friday, October 3rd, at the filling station, we are doing a select board meet and greet where we will be there available to meet folks, get to know people, let people, ask us questions about who we are and why we're invested here in Hartford. So I believe that starts at 5 p.m.
5:30.
5:30 p.m. So hope to see some of y'all there and hope to see some new faces.
Thank you, Ashley. All right, then we have no appointments at this time, and then we'll move on to our select board town manager, town of Hartford town manager, who's just come back from Scotland.
Who will immediately hand it off to the previously acting town manager who put together tonight's agenda packet.
Yeah. Let's see.
You didn't bring us back any shortbread?
That's a conversation that could take place at another time. Tim. I did have a bit of shortbread to declare.
Yes. Okay, thanks, John. Just presenting information that occurred over the last period, as long as the significant activity report from other departments as well. But I will open with, we did have a third alarm fire on Barnes Avenue back on Tuesday. The department responded to it around 10:56 in the morning. Fire originated on the second floor of the structure and caused significant damage to the upper level and the roof of the building, with water damage affecting most of the structure. There was one firefighter that sustained a minor injury, and I'm happy to say he's returned back to work. 2 dogs did perish in the fire. Some reptiles and cats were also rescued during the operations. All residents were accounted for, and we're classifying the building as currently uninhabitable. Ledgeworks, their property manager, arranged housing for all the displaced tenants, and the Red Cross services were also available to them as well. It's currently being investigated by the fire marshal and the Vermont Fire Investigations Unit, as long with insurance investigators that are participating in the investigation. And it's currently listed as undetermined as cause, but that may change in the future. And I'd like to thank all the mutual aid the community received from Lebanon, Hanover, Norwich, Plainfield, Pomfret, Woodstock, Meriden, and Windsor fire departments to support these operations. And Heartland and both Lebanon Fire provided coverage to other emergencies that were still occurring in the community while that fire was happening. Hartford Parks and Rec received their reaccreditation on September 17th, making them one of few of 213 accredited agencies nationwide. And that was celebrated at the Commission for Accreditation Parks and Recreations Conference. When that's a regional collaboration, the town of Hartford Selectboard reached out to the fire department to provide contracted ambulance services to a portion of their community. They've approved, and we've approved that new enhancement to regional emergency service, as well as a new revenue generating service for the town. As far as emergency planning, I met with the Public Works Department to discuss current drought conditions and assess emergency preparedness for both the Coolidge and the White Road Junction water systems. While both systems are currently operating without known impacts, we are proactively developing contingency plans to ensure continued service in the event of worsening conditions. Community safety collaboration. I attended the first full situation table meeting held at the Hartford Police Department, where I observed multiple agencies process designs to support services to people suffering acute elevated risk in this community. It was a collaborative approach that brings together law enforcement, health and human services, and community partners to intervene in early and to provide coordinated support. It was encouraging to see this model work in action and the commitment of all the agencies involved in immediate action towards some of these cases. And then we talked about it earlier, but there is a statewide burn ban. On September 22nd, the Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation issued a statewide burn ban effective that afternoon, and it's not to issue any permits statewide until further notice. And then the town of Hartford has been awarded a $1.5 million Vermont Bicycle Pedestrian Grant Program to design, engineer, and construct a sidewalk along Coolidge Main Street between the library and the Coolidge Bridge, including a connection to the Coolidge Green Circle. That grant agreement and documents and implementation schedule will be processed with the state in the next coming weeks. And then for my own shout out to my department, Deputy Fire Marshal Amy Jerome completed her probationary period, is now a full-time fire inspector and firefighter EMT. It's a significant milestone for her, as she had none of those certifications when she came on board. And then one of our firefighters, Ian Duffy, was promoted to senior firefighter during this period. And then from other departments, to call out a few things, the Assessor Office received all BCA determinations, processed and shared those reports with the Finance Department. The Communication and Media Specialist reports he was on scene capturing photos during the structure fire and worked with the fire department on the press release, included photos for media outlets and other press releases. He's currently working with the Parks and Recreation Department to set up a digital signage at WABA, which will be able to display town messaging for visitors in the lobby for visitors when they arrive. From the Environmental Sustainability Coordinator, reminding Hartford's window dresser build will take place on October 2nd through the 8th at the Sharon Congregational Church. Although it's too late to order inserts for yourself this year, it's still a great opportunity to volunteer with your neighbors and meet people in the community. From Public Works, they've met with representatives from Qualified Ventures regarding the restructuring of water and sanitary rates. From the Highway Division, they replaced 7 culverts on Queechee Main Street to Queechee West Hartford Road to improve drainage. And they continue summer road grading, ditching, and roadside mowing. From the Water Division, they repaired a water main leak on Division Street. And Harold Jones, the Assistant Chief Wastewater Operator, received his DM1 certification from the state. Parks and Rec continues to finalize the WABA Arena schedule, several moving pieces with multiple user groups, and their first operational day on the ice is scheduled for October 13th. They also report that additional new park rule signs will be installed soon. The signs will update all the parks on the park usage rules, permits, and ordinance language. The sign was designed in-house by Administrative Assistant Margaret Marion. Additional signage will be included at the kilowatt that outlines all off-leash areas and the requirements for users to have dogs on a leash while using the park. And they also report that we prepared for a trunk or treat. It's going to be held the day after Halloween. That's at November 1st. I believe it's going to be right here. And then for Planning and Development, obviously the grant we just talked about, they received another grant for $25,000 for Vermont Designated Downtown Program to support White River Junction downtown business area. And then finally, the police department reports that they responded to the Hazen Trail area. While on site, officers observed several items that appeared to be consistent with recent reported thefts in town. Officers confirmed the items located a solar address sign and over $1,300 worth of power tools, where the items were reported stolen. Through investigation, the offender was located, placed under arrest, and all the property returned to their owners. The Hartford Police hosted and Lieutenant Fenari chaired the situation table that I discussed in my brief on 9/18 and 9/26. And they're here to enhance service providers' connections with people in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Sure.
Who was in the earliest part of your report? Who is the person that would be the contact for the like community outreach? I think is what we're calling it. I feel like I've heard it called Heart Star or Heart
At the
Star.
police department? Yeah, it would be Lieutenant Fenari, just was recently promoted into that position. He's now the lieutenant in charge of community outreach.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up, board report, motions and ordinances, and we will start with the update from the Historic Preservation Commission.
Good evening, you all. I'm Jonathan Checkman. I'm the chairman of the Historic Preservation Commission. We've been doing this since 1993. The town has received over $210,000 worth of matching grants from the state and from the Department of Interior. And I know that you have the printout for the PowerPoint, and I'm really willing to take any sort of questions or help me lead the conversation in a way that's going to be mutually beneficial. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, Jonathan, and this was a question that former Select Board Vice Chair Kim Souza had asked. And it was about how much do you do, or are you pursuing markers or whatever that's needed to support any kind of indigenous cultural artifacts? I know that you have something at the Historic Preservation that, you know, deals with this, but is there anything that we are adding on through Historic Preservation that deals with indigenous cultures around here? And I know that it's a hard thing because sacred places are sacred places. Yet I remember last year we talked about this and I went to the head of the Winter Center and asked them if they would be willing to meet. They said they would, but then when I tried to contact them and get them to come so that we could do this, I never was able to connect again.
Well, as you know, we're at the confluence of several rivers, and there are traditional meeting grounds here and gardens, seasonal for indigenous groups and things of that nature. There have been some excavations in accordance with some state projects, and some artifacts have been obtained from doing that. We have a current granting session coming up shortly, and we had discussed in the group that dealing with indigenous situations and trying to get some kind of research done, some sort of survey. We're still a little vague about how to approach that, but it's something that we're going to try to get funding to do in the next season and see what can materialize. You know, we have a vast geography with many roads and rivers and streams and places where people may have had encampments in the past, and we're certainly willing to look at all of those, but again, it's part of the process. But we will reach out to the winter group and see if we can get someone who can assist us in some of the planning.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions? Ida?
Yeah, thanks for coming in and for sharing the slides, and I was interested to read the kind of list of your past projects. I just wondered if you might share a little bit more information about a couple of them, that just because I'm curious. Two of the past projects you list name, like Christian Street and Jericho. Can you say anything more about what projects your commission worked on in those areas?
Well, actually, there are a number of historic districts, and certainly Christian Street and Jericho have been on the docket. Because I've been dealing with this since 1993, I may have lost a little bit of my memory about which of those projects we did and when. So I really can't address that. I'm a little unprepared to do that. You certainly can go online and look at the National Register nominations and online and find the information, and they are in some of the libraries, but again, I'm being a little vague about that as I am somewhat unprepared
Okay.
to
Yeah, I
wrestle
think I
with it.
understand the list better now, that those are all historic districts that you've
Yes.
identified in the past, right? They're all fall under that. Okay.
And we're still trying to get some money to make some signs for a few of those districts that don't have them.
Right.
And that has to come out of private funds versus actually grant funds. So that's just an aside. But some of the areas are marked and you can see them on the roads, but others aren't. And so we hope to get some sort of signage at some point.
Okay.
Thank you, Ida. Anybody else? Yes, Tim?
Hey, Jonathan, thanks for coming in. I've noticed in general, the overlays in Hartford for this work, which is good, great work. They're identified as historic districts, and then we identify structures that contribute to that district. So in the case of White River, in the building I manage, for example, the brick building across from the Hotel Coolidge, it's not a designated historic building from a federal standard, but it contributes to the historic district. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because in the past, when I've tried to seek some creative funding for keeping the building up and keeping its historic integrity, they're generally not available when you're in a district that's a contributing structure, but your building specifically isn't identified itself. So
well,
I just
who counseled you on that? Because if you are a contributing building within a district, it's just as valid.
There were distinct preservation funds that were not available unless that building was specifically designated, not just a contributing structure within a district. So they may have changed the rules, but it might be worth reviewing that and determining whether there may be a value in having specific buildings identified in a different manner. That's all.
And did they discuss the financial aspects of that? How to deal with the funding in order to see if there was any grants available?
Yeah, I mean, it gets pretty complicated. I mean, some things, were like tax credits and things like that. But, as you know, like once you get to that kind of federal, can I have some money from you? It gets pretty convoluted. But I just remember distinctly running into that difference between a contributing structure as opposed to a designated building.
I've never heard of that distinction before, so I can certainly look into that.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for all the work you do, and thanks to you and Matt for putting this presentation together for us. A few things. First of all, I was in the middle part of the country recently, and in a part of the country where development is happening very rapidly. Traveling around and just seeing the same sort of variations of the same 5 styles of houses over and over and over again. And then so coming back was just a breath of fresh air. And so first, I think you sort of acknowledging, I know that the commission does more than just architectural work. I know that you do things like talking to the dairy farmers of White River Junction and recording all that history and so forth, and other projects that are really pretty cool. But from an architectural perspective, how lucky we are in this region to have the architecture and the diversity of architecture that we have. And it's just, maybe it's just me, but it really was eye-opening, and it makes me further appreciate the work that the commission does and the work that you've done, which I want to just highlight you mentioned being on the commission since 1993. That's over 25 years of service. And I think that's, I don't know if that's a town record, but if not, it's got to be close. It's got to be close. So congratulations for that. And I know that you serve on the White River Design Review Committee, and have done so since 2014. So there's another 11 years of committee service. And I know that those aren't the only things, Hartford or the Coolidge Library and board and so on and so forth. So, thank you for your service.
Oh, you're very
continued service, and all of your past service. I want to give you the opportunity today, and you might want to move that mic up a little bit. That one is notoriously bad at, or maybe we got a new mic
That's a
there.
new mic.
I know.
How about that? That looks different. It didn't often pick up the volume well, but maybe we have a new equipment. But I want to give you the opportunity to just highlight that the commission is 3 members right now, and it's a 5-member commission, and you have 2 seats to fill.
Mm-hmm.
What are the types of skill sets and interests and things that that applicants or potential applicants might bring to the table? So sort of what are you looking for, and what out there in the community, if I'm interested in one thing or another, what might I be able to bring to the committee?
Well, we're certainly looking for someone who's motivated and enjoys living in the Upper Valley. It's really important that someone as yourself recognizes how unique we are and how our building stock is out of the ordinary. And one of the things that we try to deal with is to save buildings from being torn down. And so it was a little disconcerting when the Board of Education decided to tear down an 1880s building on their area to create a parking lot where it could be either used for reconstruction, for training for some of the students, or dwellings for individuals. But be that as it may, anyone with any sort of widespread knowledge of architecture or history or just local lore. There are a lot of individuals that may not necessarily be educationally schooled in architecture and construction methods, but they enjoy the area and they've grown up here. And so again, appreciation is really an important aspect. And so there are some individuals that had some interest, but they had other occupations or other business that took them away. But we're open for anyone that has a burning desire to help save our historic resources here. So whomever has that fire and we won't ask the chief to put it out, but we'll just try to keep them motivated and save the town. So that's the basic. That's it.
Thank you.
Anybody online, Miranda? No. Yes, Ashley and then John.
Yeah, quick, this is a follow-up to Eric's point. Well, also, thank you so much for all the time that you've put into conserving those important things about our town. And I was just curious if you have been able to work with our communications person, JD Hawks, at all on marketing to fill those vacancies, or how motivated you might be to fill those vacancies. You may not feel the need to do that, but I don't know if that's something that you know is a resource to you.
We really haven't recognized it, although Matt has certainly put ads in various places and tried to encourage individuals. I believe it's on the website. And I know we've certainly talked about it and tried to outreach people that have some interest. But I've not met the individual, and we can certainly try to make some communications with him and have him come to one of our meetings if he's got the time, and just give us a spiel and try to sell himself. So
yeah,
see what happens.
And it may be worth, John, a bigger topic of how maybe we set up a time for JD to visit each committee, because really what he's harnessed is social media and a monthly newsletter that I know a lot of people read, whereas I don't think as many people go check the website every month or every week. So the social media, maybe you may find a bunch of people that are like, hey, I just retired, or I'm young, I want to get involved. So yeah, just encourage you to make that connection and put it on our list.
That's a great lead. Thank you for turning us on to that. That's great.
Yeah, good luck. Thank you.
John.
I'm just curious whether we've had any update from the state with regard to its plans to return our stolen weather vane.
Well,
To its
funny
rightful
you should
town.
ask that, because I emailed David Sheets this morning, as I had done 2 weeks ago and before that, and asked for some information as to how they could sign it over to the town and how we can build some sort of a stand. And I have not received a response. So it's out there, and he's aware of our interest. And last time he communicated, he said something, oh, well, by the fall. And I know Matt and I thought, well, that's a pretty short time frame. I don't know how they could deal with that. But the reality of it is we haven't heard back from them. So there's the Shelburne Museum, there's AOT, there's just a whole lot of making some kind of a contract and dealing with it accordingly. So.
Well, thank you for pressing on that with them.
Oh, certainly, sure.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. We appreciate all your service.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next update is from Housing and Homelessness Committee and the Housing Survey Update.
Are you all able to share its PowerPoints yet? Yes.
Especially just a couple slides on there, I think are important. I don't have to go through the whole thing. I know I'm trying to squish this in. Anyway, hi, I'm John Hafner. I'm the chair of the Hartford Committee on Housing and Homelessness. Just here to provide an annual update on what the committee's been up to, and wanting to specifically go through a couple things that we were working on. First one is to report back on the rental inventory survey that we ran. And then another one is to tease this project that we've been developing, a pilot project on building infill small scale housing. So Miranda, are you in charge of that? If you want to just scroll down, so that's us. You don't need to look at that, but just to make a note here that we are now a fully stocked committee. All those folks, thank you. Then go down. This just highlights a few of our recent activities. I'll just note that the rental inventory survey, we launched that in May of this year, and it ran through the summer. And I'm gonna just try to go a little bit over here so I can see a bit better. This is just a quick summary of the results. So we're pretty happy with the turnout that we got. 43 renters and 27 property owners responded to the survey. Big takeaway from the renters are that majority of them are cost burden, and that cost burden means that they spend at least 30% of their income on housing. So a large majority of the respondents are cost burden, but then also a plurality of those who responded are severely cost burdened, meaning they spend over 50% of their income on housing. Other concerns that were expressed in the survey were concerns that their rent was rising at a rate that was outpacing their income, and that the rising rental rates were not necessarily translating to upkeep of the property. There was concern that there was a lack of upkeep on the property. From the landlord perspective, some things to highlight are that 0% of the units were currently unoccupied. So there was a 0% vacancy rate on from the property owners that responded to the survey. The concerns from the landlord perspective were the concerns with higher property taxes. And then just a sort of anecdote here that, only one of the units was mentioned as being used for short-term rental, and that rental unit was registered with the state as a short-term rental. So you can go ahead and scroll down, Miranda. This table just gives you a sense of what the distribution of building types that were in the responses to the survey. So the majority of the responses were from either renters or property owners of apartment units, so larger structures, but there was also a significant amount of responses from people who have lived or rented duplexes as well as multifamily units, which would be like a triplex, fourplex kind of situation. Apartments tend to be higher than 5 units is the definition. So this one I want to just take a bit more time to put into context here. One of the reasons that we wanted to do this rental survey was that a lot of the existing data is flawed. It's hard to really capture, especially in smaller communities, really specifics and granular detail on, and also just qualitative information on what the rental landscape is. So this table just sort of puts into context our survey with other existing data that's out there. The first column is from the American Community Survey, that's census data. These are kind of semi-annual survey reports that are sent out, and the uptake of them is not great. It doesn't provide a very clear or granular snapshot, but it is some existing data that's out there. That American Community Survey data says that the median monthly rent in the town of Hartford is $1,177. That feels really low. I think anybody who is a renter here would probably be happy to be paying that amount. And to also clarify this, it doesn't say what that is, if that's a average studio, if that's a median, house. It just says that what is the median rent that you pay. Median income from the American Community Survey is $73,879. The significance here is that the way that the Department of Housing and Urban Development sets their fair market housing rate is based off of area median income, which is based off of census data. So their fair market rate is established from, or is very similar to this median monthly rent number that you see here. So the fair market rate for the town of Hartford is $1,168, or that's in Windsor County, I should say. So this data suggests what a fair rental amount would be. One of the things that we found in our survey, obviously from the people that responded to it, was that that was not necessarily what they were paying. So with finding a fair market rate rental unit might have significant challenge, and does likely have significant challenges. So not even a studio apartment in any of our survey responders was in at the fair market rate level. What we found in our survey was that it was actually closer to what the Low Income Housing Coalition publishes in their out of reach report. So that middle column there is from the Low Income Housing Coalition's Vermont statewide data from their out of reach report. So what they found was that the median income is in in the state of Vermont is 47,000. It's very different, and that's just amongst renters. So it's very different from the 73,000 median income found in the ACS data. It's likely that the ACS data is including homeowners, which would have a significant higher rate. So the out of reach report is really capturing what renters' median income is, and that aligns closely with what our survey respondents identified as their median income. That number above the 47,000 figure is what the out of reach report deemed would be an affordable rate for a person earning the minimum wage in the state of Vermont. So if you kind of think about that, would tend to be actually fair market rate. If a person's earning minimum wage, they need to be able to afford a minimum level of housing. So working at 40 hours a week at minimum wage, they would need to be able to find a $729 rental unit, which they would likely not be able to find here in Hartford. To put another way, a minimum wage worker would have to work 67 hours in order to be able to afford the fair market monthly rent in the state of Vermont. That's that 1,168 figure. So it's all just to say that, again, housing is not affordable for the incomes that exist in Hartford and in Vermont, and that was borne out in our survey results here. Scroll down. How am I doing on time? I know that slide took a lot, but that was important. Just to summarize here, the key takeaways. So we either need to, based off of that data, we either need to raise incomes or lower rents. Vacancy is certainly a part of that. So to that point too, low vacancy rates are a contributing factor to the high cost of housing. So certainly adding additional units to make that vacancy rate not so low would be beneficial. But I think also within that is one of the, I think, inherent tensions that exist and was borne out in our survey, as well as that tenants and landlords do have competing perspectives on housing challenges facing Hartford. So while tenants feel as though there are increasing rents and they're not seeing the appropriate delivery of services based off of those rents, landlords are concerned about rising property taxes and strict eviction policies in the state of Vermont. And those are competing tensions that need to be resolved as we address the housing situation here. All right, moving on just quickly to go through one of the, because this pilot project that we're working on relates to that tension between landlords and tenants. Smaller scale housing and infill housing that is rented out by the local community members tends to be naturally more affordable. And so increasing that kind of housing stock is one of the aspirations that we would like to see happen. So we're pitching this, what we're calling a Big Little Build ADU pilot project. Next slide. This concept emerged out of the Home Creators Expos that the town of Hartford participated in, where we provided technical assistance, training, and workshop opportunities for people in town who are interested in building an ADU. The efficacy of ADUs are that they, that they are best suited for adding housing stock at the community level, and that they can fit into the existing environment and landscape. The challenge, though, with these are that they are still quite expensive. Our idea is that the town is well positioned, however, to coordinate resources to help offset the expense of these types of infill housing units like ADUs, cottage courts, duplexes, things like that. One of the things that we did when the Home Creators Expo was to provide resource and technical assistance in design, architecture, planning and zoning, and construction, and then also collate and provide support for going after municipal and state level financing options. But one of the things that we also noticed about these types of events was just that bringing a network of participants together that were interested in adding this type of housing is needed in order to really support something that is inherently risky for people who have never worked in development or built a rental unit. All right, go ahead with the next one. We can just skip this. This is just sort of our concept that we provide technical assistance, financial support, and a network of people who are interested in engaging in the process in order to help people along through it. The conceptual process that we're looking at is that participants would meet with a committee of town staff and housing professionals, enter into and talk about their project, go through some pre-development necessities like building permits and things like that. And then we could provide resources to navigate through that pre-development process. Once the permit is granted, then participants would be eligible to apply for Hartford Business Revolving Loan Fund, or I always forget what this VCT, Vermont Community Development Program, in order to actually move into the construction phase of this pilot project. Once in the construction phase, technical assistance providers would be made available through consultation. So that could be designers, architects, folks that are able to make that kind of vision or conceptual idea into reality. And then finally, rental units would become occupied. So, and also I guess through that construction process is again, the idea that there would be a community of support behind who would be going through this together, and that they could offer sort of support to each other. We would like to see 5 units come out of this type of process. And my understanding too is that the Planning and Development Department has been in conversations with the town manager around how this could fit within the Planning and Development's budget. So anyway, future plans, obviously we want to work on other things as well. One of the things that we know has been significant, is a significant challenge facing our town, is the rise in homelessness. And I'm the first to admit that we're not doing enough to address this crisis. You know, other than we recently hosted a film screening of Just Getting By to increase town dialogue around this issue. I would personally like to see us working more with planning and zoning on ordinances that could help address homelessness, and we'll continue to partner with public safety and parks and recs departments on new efforts. And I think one of the biggest things is the need to advocate for state involvement, because some of the most recent crises have been a result of the stoppage of the motel voucher program. So yeah, I'll leave it there. I know that probably took up most of the time. I tried my best to get through
Thanks,
it.
John.
Yeah.
Any questions? That was a lot to take in. Ashley?
Sure. Yeah. Well, John, I'm so excited to join this committee. First of all, I'm like so impressed by the work that you all have been doing there. And I'm super excited about the pilot project. I think ADUs are a great way to address the housing crisis. And I think that people underestimate how expensive project development costs are. Like you could easily sink tens of thousands of dollars into design and permitting and planning. So I think that's a great way that the town could support existing homeowners who have some land and want to add some housing to our grand list as well. So my question is about kind of what you touched on towards the end there, the homelessness piece, and how we're seeing a rise in that since the state has ended the motel voucher program. And I'm just curious about how the committee or yourself, if you've been able at all to engage with some of the unhoused folks here in Hartford, if there are any relationships that you've established, or if that's something the committee is interested in doing, is like being in community with some of the folks that are oftentimes right outside here, outside the municipal building. And yeah, what that might look like in the future of the committee.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that that would be something that we as a committee would be interested in engaging in and have talked about it. As a committee, we haven't, and individual members of the committee do come from backgrounds in social work and nursing, and have had more personal experiences and worked with social services agencies in that capacity. So it's helpful to have that perspective on the committee. I think that the committee as a whole figuring out how to operate in a capacity as a committee itself would be valuable to making that, to building those relationships.
Thanks so much.
Other questions? Hi.
Hi, John. Thank you for your work. This is excellent, really good to see. I think just a couple points that stood out to me, like the working with the zoning board on ordinances, sounds like a really good direction to go. And yeah, I think it'd be wonderful maybe in your next update to hear like, yeah, if you've identified specific ordinances or areas that you think could, you know, be revised and improved. And then also, I mean, you didn't talk about it, but on that last slide too, you had this like bulk purchase modular housing program concept. I mean, that sounds really promising. Like ADUs are an awesome and a piece of the solution. I think what, you know, gives me pause is like, oh, it's like one by one. Yeah, it's like, so it's like, how can we like be more, yeah, think more like in bulk. So I don't know if you want to, if you have time or you want to share about that.
Yes, thank you for noticing that,
Yeah.
because that's actually something that I am really excited about. And anytime I get a chance to talk with regional partners around this, that's the point that I try to make. I was actually at a housing mixer in the city of Lebanon that their planning and development department put on, and was plugging this point because the city of Lebanon has been doing a lot in modular home construction and looking into public lands in particular for doing that on. And I think that if you could figure out how to kind of collate all of the public land that's available, and then figure out and also invite private property owners to participate in this purchasing modular housing at scale, you can receive a significant discount on the construction costs. And the housing committee toured Preferred Building Systems warehouse down in Claremont and talked to they're a modular building, modular builder in the region, and they are ready to start churning out homes and would be willing to offer that at a decreased rate. And so I think it's a perfect example of how you can get the entire region involved to help lower the cost of building construction. You can maximize and leverage municipal owned land on town sewer and water to be able to make the construction costs lower. And then you can also offer it to not just renters, but also home ownership. So that this is, because that's been one of the sticky things, that is, how do you bring back starter home stock available to folks that are ready to move out of the renter situation and start to try to purchase a home. So that's one of the areas that I see a lot of promise in, and would really like for Hartford to play a role in making that happen.
Do you have one more question? That's all right. So yeah, that's super exciting. Thanks for sharing your interest in that. And I think regional collaboration is like a real strength of our area. So great that your committee is tapping into that. I just want to go back briefly to the first key takeaway from the survey data that you shared, that we either need to raise incomes or lower rents. I think it sounds like your committee is mostly focused on the other pieces of like increasing housing stock, which is excellent. Just wondering if you have any thoughts on raising incomes or lowering rents or stabilizing rents and policy around that. And
yeah, I would also say, just hearing that out loud, I should have said like lower rents and raise incomes, because I think that would actually probably help a lot of people out in this scenario. So it's not a one or the other thing. I think that it's possible to make a much more thriving community by increasing incomes and lowering rents as well. So anyway, that's besides the point. Yeah, I mean, I think that having our charge within the committee is much more relevant to the rental piece. I think partnering with tenants around what their experiences are and understanding what their income restraints are would be helpful. And I think that telling that story will in and of itself help, I think, for the necessity that in the Upper Valley, the cost of housing is making it so that people aren't actually having a living wage. I think that that's a piece of it, but I think that the onus is going to be on employers, I think, to start to recognize that. So I think we can advocate for that in our capacity. And
yeah. Yeah, I guess what I'm pointing towards is like, I mean, a step further. I mean, Burlington has like a rent control ordinance locally. So I just wonder, I mean, yeah, I haven't done a ton of research on it, but I'm just wondering if that's something your committee would be interested in delving into and researching as a possibility.
Yeah, we've looked into it somewhat. I think we need to do a lot more research and understanding of it. We've gotten some information from other communities that have looked at and utilized those rental ordinances and have kind of started some conversations, but haven't really moved anywhere beyond that. But I think looking for existing case studies that have utilized that as a mechanism is an option.
Is there anybody online, Randy?
Very good.
Hi, just a few things came to my mind as I was listening here. First of all, White River is the poor town. That you got to realize that by now. We are poor and we're attracting more and more poor every day. And, I was wondering, did you do any, I know I've heard about these ADUs before. I think they're a great idea. You had a thing up at the high school about it. I mean, what is the interest? Do you have people in the town of Hartford that are willing to do this? Do you know? Or
we do, and that's what the interest for us in developing more of the support network around helping them do that, because I think the interest is there, and conceptually it's a great solution for adding the type of housing that I think that we need here in Hartford. I think that the challenge is that even a small scale housing unit is still a housing development project, and that is a lot to take on. And so we've gotten a lot of interest, but I think it's adding more and more structure and support to help that interest actually result in the kinds of units that we're looking for.
so you have like what, 100 residents that want to put one of these on their property?
So we had 150 to 200 people attend these ADU expos, and I think from that we did a survey that was some 70 so folks were interested in adding it to their property. So I think it's I think that there's a significant amount, enough to I think explore and put the put more effort behind this, certainly.
Yep. And you know what, that Just Getting By movie, I've watched it 3 times, and it's heart-wrenching. And it doesn't really deal with the drug issue with homelessness in that movie, as I recall. And what irritates me is that it was shown in Hanover, it was shown in Norwich, it was shown, it wasn't shown in Norwich, it was shown in Woodstock, and St. Paul's did it, and the Bugby did it. So what bugs me is, are you showing it to Lebanon? I feel Hartford, we just keep doing, we are the only people with heart in this town, in this upper valley. And it just worries me to see the town continually go down, is what's happening with the drug addicts and the addiction that's going on here. The other day, I heard somebody work at the Haven, and there are ex-prisoners being sent out of Pennsylvania and coming up here and living because they're homeless as soon as they walk out of prison. And that really kind of bugs me. And I don't know, people, I guess people are just blind. And then the ordinances, you're talking about ordinances. Who enforces the ordinance? Is that going to be a zoning to enforce the ordinance? Just because of the ordinance I'm trying to get enforced, who does it? Whose job is it? And working with Lebanon, do you work with Lebanon? I know that film's all about Vermont, but it isn't like it's all in Vermont. So that's just obviously I'm worked up about it, but these are things I think about, and it's not that I'm not a compassionate person, and that's what people seem to think. My heart goes out to all of these situations. But
thank you so much. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we've reached your time. I really appreciate your comments.
Yeah, thanks, Marie, and I hear you. Society's crumbling. Honestly, that's the way I feel sometimes, and so I think frustrations are well heard, and I don't know. We'll keep plugging away and keep. I think
the thing is, you don't see these problems in Hanover and Norwich. Okay, you don't. Thank you very much. Good luck.
One thing that I just wanted to clarify too real quick is since we've been talking about ADUs a lot, I just want to clarify that the pilot project is not just about or it doesn't just have to be about ADUs. It could be any kind of small scale infill housing. ADU is a good example of that, but obviously it can include cottage court, duplex, anything that can kind of fits into that missing middle concept of housing.
Jim?
Just two quick thoughts for you. One is the tech center has been creating houses for a while. I think it's typically one a year or one every 2 years. And they might be an interesting resource for sort of a partner in these efforts, were you to create more of a scalable village type concept or something. So just want to throw that out there. And the ADU stuff is wonderful. For me, honestly, like I've been intrigued to do this even myself, but you kind of get into this whole thing of like, what does it cost to create and what's the other end look like? So you typically do migrate to like, oh, I can rent it out for Dartmouth graduation weekend at 10,000 or whatever. Like you do that if you want to create something, because you have to kind of make that investment justified, right? So I am intrigued by the idea of creating some pretty aggressive incentives for people to create these. That is to say, maybe it's a 5-year tax relief thing where they're not incurring taxes for that front end to kind of make it more palatable. So I think we're going to have to be pretty creative and pretty aggressive, but we really want to start seeing these things showing up by incentivizing, people from an investment standpoint. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks.
Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. John, thank you and the committee for the work that you're doing in the presentation tonight. It feels like we've seen you just recently, and I'm glad you're back on the agenda. I'm glad we're to continue to talk about this, and I think we probably need to be hearing from your committee more than once a year for sure in the near future. A few points I want to touch on. The pilot program is encouraging. I'm excited that you're pursuing that. It ticks a lot of boxes, including circulating local dollars in the local economy. It's another aspect of it, as opposed to large scale developments where money might flow elsewhere. The modular, scalable modular homes is encouraging as well. One thing that's really been on my mind is something you guys did back in June. So the Home Share Vermont, I think is as you probably well know, it's we don't have to create anything, right? We don't have to do construction. It's just about it's matchmaking, really, right? And so I'm wondering along those lines. I don't know exactly whether you just advertised and then invited people to participate in a forum or what have you. But are there ways? Is the committee thinking about ways to do targeted outreach? For example, what might be the indicators of potential participants? So looking at if we looked at the real estate in town, we might find that, or maybe a potential indicator is the size, living area, and maybe living area per person, if we could get that, and additional demographic information, which of course raises concerns about what do we do with that data and how do we safekeep it once we have it. But gathering data and targeting households and other potential participants is something that I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad that you brought that up too, because it sort of hits on that another bullet point of one of the future activities that we want to get on that we actually currently are doing it. One of our committee members, Jen Kravitz, has been working with the town community nurse and Bugby Senior Center to develop an outreach project that would go out and meet with older folks in town and to just do basic outreach that way. And so that, I think, is a one-on-one. It's done more out of the impetus of concern for loneliness and isolation, but I think it has a housing element to it, in part because they may be having a hard time maintaining their home, maybe at risk of homelessness themselves. They may be a good candidate for home share. So being able to meet them one-on-one in those contexts and build those relationships could be an avenue for advocating for a home share situation there. So that is another kind of pilot project that is in the works, and a great partnership with the town nurse and Bugby Senior Center as well.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, it's a good example of something ticking multiple boxes. You know, there's the social aspects of it and the practical aspects of home upkeep and so on. One other area that I wanted to touch on, and this sort of follows along with the line of questioning that I was talking about or asking about with respect to the slide, the key takeaway slide. In that phrase, we either need to raise incomes or lower rents. I think that you've got some good ideas, and you and the committee have some good ideas, and the town staff has good ideas about how to do some of these things. But they are, they're going to be really hard to move. They're going to be really hard to move. So in my mind, we need to be looking more broadly. And it's not necessarily within the purview of your committee, but I did want to bring to your attention, and this is maybe data that you use and know about, but the Vermont Basic Needs Budget. This is something the Joint Fiscal Office creates on an annual basis. I think there's a statute that says they have to do it, and they do it for the legislature, but we get to benefit from it as well. And one of the pieces of information they say, so they create a budget for different types of households, like a single person with a child, 2 adults, no children, and so on and so forth, different profiles. I think there's 5 or 6 of them. But for a single person, they're shelling out roughly $600 a month for transportation. So it's car payments, maintenance, insurance, fuel, et cetera. A household with 2 adults and 2 children between $1,100 and $1,300. So that's, they give you the numbers for urban versus rural environments. The $1,300 is in the rural environment for transportation. In both of these household configurations, the amount spent as a percentage of total monthly expenses committed to transportation is between 16 and 21%. So in my mind, we have a lot of different levers that we should be tugging on at the same time. And this is one of them. So if people are spending, if we can't change the 30%, you know, we can't unburden the housing part of it, or we can really not move that significantly. Do we free up portions of people's income by creating transportation solutions that make their overall budget more affordable? And there's other parts of their budget that might be where this might be feasible as well. But so that's the kind of thinking that I think we need to do, where we're not focused on just one thing, but we're breaking across the silos, and we don't have a committee specific to transportation, but I know the Energy Commission might take on some of those responsibilities and have that as part of their focus as well. But you know, car dependency and the price of, or the cost of that is a factor in people's budgets.
Yeah, and I agree with that sentiment. I think also in that the cost of healthcare has gone up exorbitantly. And so these are costs that contribute to the overall housing burden as well, if not directly, indirectly. Transportation, I think, is probably a better example because of the way that our built environment is laid out. You know, that then puts burden on the transportation sector. It makes a scenario in which people become dependent on cars, in which in other situations that they might not need one. So I think when we're thinking about housing, and hopefully as we work more closely with the Planning Commission, we can start to think about ordinances that would also support opportunities for other modes of travel as well. I think one thing that I would like to explore, and I'm excited to see on this agenda, is that there's an opportunity for a parking feasibility study to make sure that we're not adding parking in a way that inhibits other ways of getting around, as well as other ways of creating more transit-friendly, multimodal-friendly types of development, in part because of the issues that you're raising. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
I think this has all been really great, and I think some of the questions that are coming up probably could be addressed to John at a separate time too. We do have to move on. You've been really patient with us, and you've got a lot of information, so we really appreciate all that you've done here.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to come back, and you're welcome to join a committee meeting anytime. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right. So the next item is the public meeting 2 of 2 on the town solid waste implementation plan. And remember, we open it first to the public for any questions, comments that they may have. And then we'll close the public comment period for that, and then it would be open to the rest of us. Okay, so I don't know if you need to give us more information here. Any changes, Brian?
No, this is just the second of the 2 public meetings for our solid waste implementation plan, SWIP. It's a 5-year renewal process. The plan is it's a form that the state sent to us. There are some components that we fill in, but for the most part, they basically tell us what we need to do with it. So this is just that meeting for public input, if you've had a chance to read it, and go from there. So.
Okay, so we'll open it to any members of the public that would like to make a comment or a question. Is there anybody online, Miranda? Okay. What? Yes.
Just a clarifying question, Brian, or John, is our motion just to approve the SWIP?
Not for tonight. After tonight's public meeting, what we just need to do is we have to get that this was held. I have to send it back into the state.
Yep.
And then they'll go for the process. There will be a time for a formal adoption of it. But we just got to make sure that we get this done, and I'll get with the state and then go from there with it. So.
Okay, if there's no public comments, either online or in the room, then we will close public comment and open it for any questions, comments from the board.
Someone just raised their hand.
What?
Someone just raised their hand. Go ahead, or wait.
I think they're gonna have to wait. Yes. Eric, you have a
Thank you,
question?
Madam Chair. Thank you, Brian. As you know, I raised questions and concerns about the disposal rate calculation. I was wondering if you had any additional thoughts on that. When I sent you an email earlier, and I didn't want to have a big back and forth via email, but when I sent that, or after I sent it, I realized I was probably using the wrong language with coupons and so on. But I was wondering if number of permits would be a suitable representation for the denominator in the equation versus Hartford population.
You know, the state, I have reached out to the state. They sent us some guidance in regards to using what they call the per capita and per day formula for that, Eric. They did say that there, as you had mentioned, there are a couple of districts out there in the state that will also include what the private haulers add in for their tonnage. But it seems like that's about it. I mean, we've got to follow that. I would recommend that, staying with that, because that's how we have, you know, when we do our retract reporting, that's how it's reported during retract reporting. If we want to take a look at other denominators like that, we could, but I would say for the plan, let's keep it to what the state has, what they're looking for that. So, but for permits, we'll hear more about that at the next meeting when Sanborn Head comes in, because that's data that I just sent them today in regards to where we're at permit wise compared for the 2-month section that we're looking at, you know, from last year to this year for that. So, well, you could say permits, but once again, though, are we talking just greater Upper Valley, you know, to greater Upper Valley, or just town of Hartford residents? We'd have to clarify that because we sell 2 different types of permits. So.
Right. Yeah. So it's a little, it gets back to the questions. What does the state want? What does the state want to indicate with that metric? What's the meaning of it? Because what we're producing right now is utterly meaningless. 0.47 pounds, that's in the 2019 SWIP, 0.47 pounds per day per person.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything.
We give them a lot of data and they put it in their state report. And it just, I question that too, the data that we give them. Because it takes a lot of time and effort for us to put all those reports together and gather that data, because we're gathering it, we're piecemealing it from different places. It's not just in one, you know, I've got to get it from Casella, I've got to get it from Lebanon, I have to get it from New Hampshire Recycle. I have to get it from AgriCycle now for scrap. So we're pulling all this data together every quarter to fulfill those reports. So, and then the data we get is only as accurate as that's given to us, because we're relying from outside individuals to provide that to us.
Right. So basically you're reinforcing what my belief was, which is we spend a lot of time creating a number that is not very useful. But if we spent about the same amount of time to produce a number that could be useful. Maybe now we're doing something productive.
I can say that the two numbers I can always consistently tie out are the tonnage, so that when Casella hauls, they take the solid waste or things out over to Lebanon landfill, those tonnages usually are spot on. So they're two numbers that I feel very accurate in that we've got, so.
Okay, well, we'll revisit this in 5 years, I suppose.
But like I say, informally, if you want any information, we'd be more than willing to give you what we can provide.
Right, this is an exercise in
Correct.
complying with a statutory mandate
Correct.
that we generate a report in the format that the state insists must be followed. We appreciate that you've got other ideas on what's going to be a more valuable metric, but at the end of the day, in order to receive the stamp of approval from the state, we need to provide them the information in the format that they want it.
Well, that may be perfectly true. My understanding was that if you don't follow one of their methodologies, you can provide your own methodology and have them approve it. Right. And so you can say, this is the methodology we're going to use because it produces a meaningful number. Do you approve of this methodology? And if they say yes, then it's a win-win, right? Then we're actually putting work into something that a metric that then we can use. To sort of
Maybe
see what's going
both
on.
can be done, maybe provide them what they've asked for in their format.
Yeah.
And then suggest that we adopt another methodology to supplement or replace it going forward.
Right. I mean, that's where I think informally, if we want to take a look at that, that would be how I think we should proceed, is do that informally. We can set up those different metrics if you want to take a look at them, Eric. But I just think for how we have to report in that extra data collection and gathering, it would be better just to stick with the per capita and per day rate as the state has laid out in how they report the data, how they're looking at the data. So,
all right, thank you.
Tim, you said you have.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for all your work on this. I think we need to kind of create two different channels here. I think channel one is just to do this state report and kind of get that done and make it happen. I know it's a ton of work. My greater concern down the road in both heading into the budget process and serving the community is really trying to get a better understanding of solid waste in Hartford. Like, what are residents doing? Are we really kind of thinking about a long-term plan around solid waste? What's it going to look like in terms of if Lebanon indeed does close at some point? So it would be interesting to start getting our head around some of those issues. And obviously curbside will probably come back up through this budget cycle. And I have no perspective on that whatsoever. Like, I have no understanding of what the residents of Hartford or the greater Upper Valley Solid Waste District, what that even looks like right now. Where is the stuff going? Who's going where? And I think some of that data and some of those insights are going to be really important. And I have it as a selfish interest in protecting Hartford too, in terms of our expense for managing our community and what we do with solid waste appropriately, and sort of peeling away some of these other, things, if you will, in the Upper Valley. So that's all. Thank you.
I think you're going to get a pretty good overview when we do have Sanborn.
right. I mean, it was scheduled for tonight, but just like say gathering the data, I've been a little hampered a little bit in my work effort too. I just got less data off, and a lot of what you're talking about, Eric, is, some of those numbers, how we've taken a look at it. So I think you'll see quite a bit of that data. What we're going to do with Sanborn Head is this is be round 3 of the feasibility study. It was presented last fall, then a revision was done in January, and now we're taking that again. And I think we're going to do an appendix to this where we show more like you looked about, how did curbside affect this? So you'll be getting some of that data on the October 14th meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the board? Okay, so I guess we wait for the next step.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
I have one more.
Yes.
Yep.
I didn't say goodbye. I said
Next
thank
one.
you.
Oh, thank you.
It's the
Okay.
purchase of the
Kicking me out already.
2026 Ford F-250 pickup truck.
This was part of the lot process. So this is the mechanic's truck.
Local option tax.
Local action tax, yes. So this is a part of that. So we did look to go over just a little bit over budget. We can also, for getting a pricing, a York rake. For those, a York rake actually is a big rake that goes on the front of the truck that helps keep the gravel roads in better condition. The vehicle that's being replaced has that now. So what we're getting is a plow that's interchangeable to York rake, and that's why there's a little bit of an overage with that. So.
I'll entertain a motion. Eric?
May I ask a question? or-
Oh, absolutely. I thought you were raising your hand.
No, I'll provide the motion momentarily, but just out of curiosity, Brian, if this is a mechanic's truck, did I understand it has just a flatbed on it?
Yeah, we're looking to transfer. We have a diesel fuel tank. And then we're also gonna look, so it could be like a service vehicle, that the mechanic could go out to the field, go if a truck's broken down somewhere, or he could go to wastewater plants, he could go to those things. He would have the capability of doing that with this truck. So it'll be a flatbed, be able to, but we're not quite sure the configuration of toolboxes and stuff like that on it, but that's why we've got a flatbed.
Okay, I was curious because I saw mechanics and I expected it would be like one of those knapheide bodies with the built-in toolboxes and all that
No,
stuff.
it's currently a flatbed, what we're
Okay.
basically replacing there, so.
And second minor question of curiosity, the York rake that you're trading an 11-foot York rake and getting a new 11-foot, is there, I mean, it's just, is there a compatibility issue or it's just, how do you wear out a rake? Yes.
Yeah, the rake's pretty rusted. It's in pretty bad condition. So it's basically that interchangeability of getting the new plow with it, with the York rake. So sort of kind of like a package deal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Brian? Or Eric, did you still want to make that motion?
I've got it right here, so
All
I'm
right.
happy to do so.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to accept the bid in the amount of $70,853.00 from Formula Ford Lincoln, Rutland, Vermont for a 2026 Ford F-250 4x4 extended cab flatbed pickup with snowplow and York rake, and authorize the town manager to sign all documents associated with the purchase of the vehicle.
Is there a second? Second by Mike. Any other questions before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
Brian.
And
Thanks,
good
Brian.
night.
Can we take a 5-minute break? And let's remember there's some things to be signed for the select board, but let's come back pretty quickly.
One thing I'll mention that's on the signature table is the loan application following up on July 22nd's approval to apply for 2 asset management plan forgivable loans from the state at $50,000 apiece. The first one has been processed and is here for signatures on multiple pages that each have sticky notes on them.
Okay, great, thank you. So come back a minute before 7. from our break. And we have the update on the Coolidge block redevelopment efforts. And Lexi, I believe you're giving us the lowdown for the.
Yes. So this is an overall update on the Coolidge redevelopment efforts, and it is also the developer coming to you asking for the town to put in an application for the Vermont Municipal Planning Grant, which is $30,000 grant to support a parking feasibility study tonight. If you say yes to that, we would still come back in front of you in 2 weeks and give you all the details for that grant, what exactly we will be saying in the application and all the documents. So just know you're not saying yes tonight and we're going to go submit it tomorrow. So we would walk through that. We're just getting a yes. Do you want us to spend our time working on this? And some background, Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission applied for a catalyst feasibility grant on behalf of this project, and they were invited back for a full application just about a week ago. So you have to provide a 1-to-1 match. So the municipal planning grant would be providing that match amount going toward that. And the overall project that Adam will get into more is to study parking feasibility, get preliminary designs, cost estimates, and timelines for the most viable parking option for this project. So I'll hand it over to Adam.
Thank you, Lexi, and thank you, members of Select Board, for having me today. I'm connected to Zoom. I'm gonna try to not throw the slides up unless you would like me to, because I think we'll just make this faster and maybe make up for a little time if I don't work off of slides, and I'll just stick to some highlights. I was here on July 22nd, and during that meeting, there were a number of questions that were posed, things that we wanted to explore further as a way to move the project forward. In the same meeting, we addressed a number of the challenges that would prevent a project from moving forward to help redevelop the Coolidge Hotel, potentially also unlock development opportunities for other sites in downtown as well. What we're trying to do today is focus on one aspect of that, which is parking. And in order to create new housing, we need to be able to provide parking for individuals that would be living in that housing. Can get into more details about the nuances of how much parking to provide. But in short, what we are trying to do is study what the best path forward is for providing said parking, confirming existing levels of kind of net demand for parking, exploring several different sites where new parking could be created, and find what the best ways to produce that net new parking are. So there's a lot of flexibility within what that could mean, but what we're asking for support on is not committing the town to any project, not committing the town to spending of money, simply studying the feasibility of creating that new parking, which is important for moving this project forward, but also important for being able to provide good answers to the questions that were posed on July 22nd when I was here last. The three things that we're asking for is kind of two official things, and one is maybe just a measure of support. As Lexi mentioned, we would like to have the town submit an application for the Vermont Municipal Planning Grant. That would be an important source of matching funds for the Northern Borders Regional Commission Catalyst Grant. The Catalyst Grant is a federal grant. It's kind of a state and federal partnership, but it is considered federal monies. To take advantage of that, which we've been invited, we've kind of passed the first threshold that we needed to pass to receive some of that grant money, we need matching funds. And so this would serve as a source of matching funds. The other interesting thing is to use the municipal planning grant, the town would have to provide a match into that as well, but these two grants can match each other. So it becomes very cost effective. And so every dollar of a municipal planning grant that we're able to get would be matched 1-for-1 by federal money. So there's a lot of leverage in this source of funding to be able to pursue the study of creating new parking, answering some of the key questions that you all had the last time I was in here, and ultimately provide some of the details needed to continue this project moving forward. A few things I want to the other ask is writing a letter of support, which has happened in the past for other projects. And my understanding is can be delegated to a member of the town staff. That would be submitted alongside our Northern Borders Regional Commission Catalyst Grant application, just as a way to show the support and the different parties around the table in this effort. The things I just wanted to underscore, this is not a long-term commitment. This is not you saying we're moving this project forward, we're building parking, we're building a parking garage, we're doing anything. This is simply to study the feasibility of one of the major things that's needed to move the project forward. Want to again underscore the leverage we're getting here through matching funds, so that every dollar of a state grant we receive, we can match with federal funds. $30,000 of state money equals 60,000 total, and we're adding a little bit more to that budget as well. And again, feasibility. We are studying the feasibility of this. There's no broader long-term commitment. So we're hoping to use this as a way to answer your questions, help educate the public as well, what the ramifications of this are, what the dollars and cents are, which was I think one of the big points brought up on July 22nd. What is it going to cost to create this infrastructure? What is the ROI to the town? And we're hoping to use this to study a number of those things and position the town ultimately for what could be a larger infrastructure ask in the future. So some of the deliverables of this feasibility study are calibrated to allow us to apply for a larger infrastructure grant, probably utilizing similar grant sources like the Catalyst grant, but future infrastructure funding, which would be beneficial. So trying to accomplish a lot, but ultimately not asking the town to spend money, simply allow us to apply for this grant and support the feasibility study to help move this project forward. I'll stop there. Like I said, happy to throw up slides, and I've got some kind of appendix slides that might answer questions you have, but just wanted to keep it moving, and we can shift over to Q&A.
I would like to add a detail. It is in the memo. So if we are awarded the municipal planning grant, but not the Catalyst grant, so therefore the grants can't match each other because we would only have one and not the other, the private developer will cover the local match requirement of around $3,333. So the town at the end of the day is out zero money if awarded the municipal planning grant and we don't get the other grant to cover the match. The private developer will cover the match. So just wanted to note that.
Thank you, Lexi. Okay, other questions? Tim.
I'll probably have a lot on this one, but my first question goes to, it's a little confusing to me how you articulated the concept of, because my understanding is the Catalyst grant has a lot more upside potential for real money. So are you suggesting that the Catalyst grant couldn't happen without the municipal planning grant? Is that what you guys are suggesting?
To utilize the Catalyst grant, you have to have matching sorts of funds. And so if you don't have matching funds, you cannot get any Catalyst grant funding. So the matching fund is required to take advantage of the Catalyst grant.
Okay, so I'm just continue to get confused. So the municipal planning grant was specific to like the parking feasibility thing. Is there any reason why we can't establish a matching thing to the Catalyst grant only? Let me ask this another way. So for me, I think there's two things here for me. One is you coming in as a private developer. I'm glad you're here. And I personally want to support it any way I can to make it happen. So that's statement one. Statement two is, and Lexi, don't be offended by this, but we've been studying parking waiver for over 15 years. I think we should have our act together by now. I think it's the public's job to know exactly what we have on the ground and what we need to create to make things happen. So let me give you one more example and then I'll be quiet. In Somerville, Mass, as you know, Adam, there's a wonderful little project called Bow Street Market. It's one of the coolest places you could ever go. I highly recommend anybody go. I'm confident when that project was created that the town of Somerville did not say to the developer, hey, you need to do this and get these grants and do this and this. They just made it happen. They found a way to say, we'll make it work. We'll get the parking right, or we'll do whatever we need to do to make it happen. So I think we need to do a little separation here between supporting you to come into our town and invest money and really get our public act together for knowing what you need to make it happen. And I just feel like we're getting a little bit in a process where we're drawing this out too long. And I know things take time, but I just want to make that message clear that I think we need to sort of shorten that cycle and say to you, hey, we want you to come here. Let's make it happen more swiftly. We probably can figure this out without doing a 1 year, 2 year grant kind of process. So that's thank you.
No, I think that's a really great point. And in some of the slides, I had the appendix expecting some kind of question on haven't we talked about all this before, was just a list of the different studies we've had, 2005, 2009, 2011, 2017, 2019. I was not involved in all of those conversations. I'm sure other folks in the room are tired of talking about parking. So I know the long history, and my view on the creation of new parking is by hiring through grant funding a consultant to assist with this study. I mean, my desire would be not just, hey, what exactly do I need for my project, but what is needed to support the kind of current demand in town. And one thing I'm going to be genuinely interested to see what happens on Friday for First Friday is what's the state of parking in downtown on First Friday? Can we find a parking spot? There's Northern Stage has a show on, Shaker Bridge Theater has a show on. It's just First Friday in October, which is already a highly trafficked moment. So to the extent that you're there on Friday night, I just encourage you to kind of reflect on that and how having the parking also supports the downtown businesses. They're kind of the lifeblood of the community. And at times, like a lack of parking prevents the foot traffic that helps make them successful. So it's not just about my project, but what is needed overall. I'm just the one volunteering the time on drafting applications and things and trying to bring this forward to make a specific request today. Thank you.
And I can point out that in the internal discussions we've had about this, quickly we acknowledged that we have lots of studies, and that helped us focus on 5 or 6 of the most promising ones identified in previous studies. So that work is not wasted, and we're not starting all over. We have a lot of stuff in the can already that has gotten us this far this quickly, I think.
Yeah, it's unbelievably valuable having decades of parking utilization data to build off of. And so that's a resource that the town has because the town has been collecting it for so long. And then as John mentioned, there's all of these previous discussions have yielded results and slides and studies. We are leveraging those, trying to move forward from those. So it serves a really great launching off point. So we don't have to recreate the wheel on all those past studies. We can take them and build on them to make it actionable today.
Ashley?
Sure. One of the concerns that folks on the board have mentioned in the past, Eric has talked about regarding some other projects, is how the town of Hartford is kind of implementing our long-term goals around transportation, and not just looking at the current snapshot of new development, how many parking spots does it need, but looking at, we want to reduce our greenhouse emissions. We want to reduce single passenger vehicle use in town. And I feel like this is an opportunity to, rather than investigate these 3 specific sites, investigate how we can reduce the amount of vehicles coming into downtown and what alternatives we could then provide to bring folks down there. So that is it. Just in my mind, I kind of wonder if the scope of the feasibility study could shift to include a bigger, longer term conversation about the planning of downtown. And I am not the generator of this idea. So I know there's other folks that have thoughts on this, and just wanted to open that conversation.
And maybe to hit it head on, the timing of how this works is we're applying for grants over the next couple of weeks, and then we would find out about what grants are awarded by the end of the year. And then there'd be a process of drafting RFP, going through procurement. And I really think that that process of drafting the RFP can become a more collaborative one in making sure at that stage we're defining what are the real questions that we want to answer. We have ideas of what that is today, but we can really sharpen those. I think that that's a really great conversation that we can have once we know how much grant funding is available. And I think that I love the ideas related to that, the ideas you've brought up. One nuance that I will mention that doesn't get, I think, talked about a lot in this kind of conversation about parking. For a project of this kind of scope and scale, there will need to be inherently more sophisticated lenders and investors involved. And oftentimes those lenders and investors will have their own requirements of they're not going to lend into a project that doesn't have a certain amount of parking secured because they view it as a huge project risk on lease up, on future marketability. So there is some level of kind of capital markets pressure there that we could build a building that doesn't have parking, but you could end up getting stuck on the backside. So that's just a nuance that I don't think I've voiced before, but something I have to consider as well. Of I don't want to get to the stage where we are excited, ready to move forward, but I can't raise the money because I wasn't paying attention to the things that those people are going to care about when it comes time to deploy that money.
Yes, Ida?
Thank you. Thanks, Adam, for coming in. Just to kind of follow up on that line of questioning, just and to get a little more like on the practical level of it, I hear what you're saying about you know, having to keep in mind how you're going to raise the money to get this done. That's obviously a crucial element. And from what I understand, and I'm interested in Lexi, your department's perspective on this too, like in terms of like the actual requirements that exist in town, we don't have a like one, like from your perspective, what do you think that means? Like, does it mean that the investors want one space per unit? From the planning department's perspective, is that what you generally require? Are there regulations around that? Are they flexible? Are they adaptable?
So for housing, I'm pretty sure it's one space per unit for housing, and this will have housing.
And that's like a ordinance?
Do you know, John? I'm pretty sure you had to have.
I believe it's.
Yeah. Yes, that's the most. However, demand is oftentimes more than that at this point. So even though he would only be required to do one parking space per unit, a lot of times these are couples living together in a 1-bedroom and things, and they have 2 cars. So all that to say, the requirements do not actually match the demand a lot of times, but all that we can require is 1 space per unit for housing.
Yeah, and maybe we could figure this out offline, because I do want to really understand. I think there isn't an existing, you can have 0 spaces per unit technically. I know that you're talking about other demands, but I don't know. I think we should all verify that. What's the rule? Yeah. I think that's my understanding right now, or that's from what John? There's no rule. Right. Okay. And then from the investor perspective, what do you know of a sense of?
Yeah, and it's maybe more of an art than a science. Some investors and lenders will have an exact number that they would want to aim for. It usually scales based on where you're building it. If you're building in Boston, they're going to care less because a lot of people in Boston don't have cars. If you're building it more in a market like here, a lot of people are driving to work, and it's just kind of the challenge of that. If you don't have enough parking for the people living there, they'll prefer to live somewhere else if you can't offer them a parking spot. Yeah. So a lot of times what I've seen is around 1.5 spots per unit. And that accounts for some number of, let's say, couples living together, sharing a car. But especially if you're starting to have any kind of 2-bedroom units, which in just public comments I've seen voicing in support of, because there's a lot of studio and 1-bedrooms in White River Junction now and getting built around the area. The idea of having, only 1 parking spot for a 2-bedroom unit starts to become a little bit challenging. But kind of 1.5 is what I would call a gold standard.
Okay. One other thought I would say about this is that we have heard different perspective from Andrew Winter from Twin Pines, who says that, in their developments, often they meet that they aim for 1 spot per unit, and many of those are unused. So maybe he could write a letter to your investors to explain that that's the situation for many folks who rent here. I don't know. Yeah.
And without getting too in the weeds on that, I would love to continue this conversation at a filling station on Friday. Happy to have it on the record, but
can't talk about business.
Are you going to bike? Are you going to bike to that event?
Well, I'll report back on Friday. Depends if I can find parking or not. So I think that the demographic served by different groups is a part of that. And the investors of a project like theirs is largely they're receiving tax credits, so it is largely taxpayer subsidized to fund that. And so a lot of things are possible if the public is willing to spend money on it. If we want the private side to invest in it, we have to find ways to kind of make that happen and bridge that gap. So that's what I'm trying to do here and protect my ability to actually make the project happen at the end of the day, and not land somewhere where we're excited about it, but I can't actually get it done when it comes down to it. No, thank you for the question.
Other questions? Miranda?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you have spoken to anyone at Advanced Transit, or how working with our public transit system might also feed into like the feasibility, because I know if we're thinking about, I know something that you mentioned in your presentation in July was like, what do we want whatever Junction downtown area to look like 20 years from now? I know that a personal goal of mine would be to be no cars, like, you know, walkability. Public transit is more common and more frequent. People are able to like bike safely, things like that. How does that like factor into this? Has that been a part of the conversation at all? Or like, what are you thinking around that aspect?
Yeah, so we've not spoken with Advanced Transit on this yet. That's something I've looked at and you know, am very much thinking about. And funny anecdote that has no bearing, but you know, I was an engineering student at Dartmouth, and as part of my senior project, I worked with Advanced Transit to create a mobile app to bring what they only had on the web to phones, so you could see live bus arrivals and bus schedules. So the idea of that in public transportation, making it accessible, is like, I love it, and actually have spent quite a bit of time working on that problem for the Upper Valley just a while ago.
Other questions?
Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to the board members for their comments and questions. I think this is informative. I don't want to exclude you from this conversation. I know you're here with a request, but really, circling back to, you know, Tim's earlier comment, we've got to figure out what we want. We have to figure out a direction for the town. And I think, you know, I'm in support of this project, and I think we can find ways to satisfy your needs for capital investors and so on in different ways. One of the things that occurs to me is that if we move ahead with long-term increases in parking capacity in downtown White River Junction, we actually undermine some of the things that we've been doing, that the town has been doing. So let me list a few of those things and I'll explain a little bit further. The town has made some recent advances and some not so recent that will help shift travel behavior toward more sustainable modes. Leveraging nearby public parking as a means of achieving the one space per unit for new development. So we know there's a maximum requirement of one space per unit, but there's no minimum. But as the chair of the Planning Commission tells me, we've been leveraging available spaces in public lots to help out essentially for developments that are municipal water and sewer. Another thing we've been doing as a town is investments in active transportation, walking and cycling. So sidewalks, bike lanes, and so on. And you know, people have criticized the bike lanes. But it's you've got to start a network somewhere, right? And that network's going to expand. And the same thing with sidewalks. Committing to parking meters. So we've just made a commitment there. I understand that it's not going to, or we can't bring that fully online until we have staff support. But it's sort of it puts a price on parking in key locations to improve or create turnover and enhance availability. And another thing that I thought of is zoning for mixed use, and I'm not well informed on this, and so Lexi, John, and others can probably tell me that all of the things that I'm missing on this list. But we've been taking, as a town, strategic actions toward sustainable mobility for the future. I think that if we go ahead and build parking, we actually undermine some of those efforts. Let me explain a little further. I have permission to share my screen. I just want to show you a picture because a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I know you don't want 1,000 words from me. You might get it anyway, but okay. So.
Measure my seed.
Pictures are good. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here, Miranda. I sent a request to share and then.
Okay, now you should have share.
Okay.
Whatever screen.
The picture, is that? Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so this is a systems diagram. And let's start off with, in this spot here, you can see where my cursor is, I hope, parking spaces per capita. So the arrows, I'll just scroll down here. The arrows indicate the direction of a relationship. The positive denotes a positive relationship where if one thing goes up, the other thing goes up. A negative indicates if one thing goes up, the other thing goes down. So that's just basic overview of the diagram. So as parking spaces increase, so does parking availability. Duh. Most of this is pretty common sense, right? We know this in our guts. When parking availability increases, the willingness to buy private vehicles increases. Now, in our environment, this is actually from a study that was done in Montreal. So much more urban environment. So they're using the word willingness here. Maybe in our context in this town, it's more about the need to buy a vehicle or have a vehicle. So as the willingness goes up, car ownership goes up, of course. The mode share private car basically means the percentage of travel that's done by private car as a whole. It's a little confusing wording, but that just means the percentage. So that goes up. And so then the demand for parking goes up. And then parking availability, the one negative in the loop is parking availability then goes down. So I think this is sort of a common sense thing, but it's helpful to depict it in this context. And I think there's a loop that's missing here, an arrow that's missing, because then that drives us back to parking spaces per capita, which is the conversation we're having tonight. And we're saying we need more of them. And then that gets us back into the loop. And meanwhile, potential ridership for advanced transit, for whatever other services we might offer, we're undercutting that. Those systems don't work without a certain capacity of people. Let me just show you one other diagram here quickly. Maybe if I know how to do this. I'll do it the old-fashioned way. So this is sort of the inverse of that. So this is the systems diagram for increasing cycling and walking and all these other modes, and in effect decreasing emissions, decreasing traffic congestion. So even if we switch to electric vehicles, which there's questions about whether first of all, the production of an EV creates a lot of emissions, but let's just say, for argument's sake, we can switch everybody. We still have congestion problems, right? So we're not solving all of the problems by just switching vehicles. We're going to need to do other things. So for me, I think I can stop sharing now. For me, I have serious reservations that we're asking the right question as a board, as town leadership. And I think that I tried to set this conversation up back in June. And basically the result of some of those discussions was we're gonna need to lump this in with the Coolidge block redevelopment. And so here we are, and apologies, because I support the project and I don't want to drag this out either through studies or through the town's indecision. But I do think we need to understand what we want to do. What is our vision? We need to be able to articulate a vision and strategic direction, and then figure out what it takes to do that. And that should form the basis for a feasibility study. And I'm going to argue that a feasibility study that's focused on increasing parking capacity in downtown White River Junction is completely the wrong thing to do. Completely and utterly the wrong thing to do. And that what we should be focused on is how do we reduce the demand for parking spaces through these other more sustainable modes of transportation, and then free up capacity, which we can basically earmark for developments and so on, so they can get their capital investments and whatever else needs to be done. So that's the basis for my thinking. I'll probably have some more comments if this conversation continues, but I think we're asking the wrong question. We're asking basically the question is how might we expand parking capacity in White River Junction? And I think we should be asking some question about how do we build and maintain a system for mobility that can be sustained, a system that is scalable. Build parking garage is not hugely scalable. In fact, your $4.5 million, July 22nd, $4.5 million, 150 spaces. The napkin math that I did on that, when you put it on an existing parking lot, you use up roughly 90 to 95 spaces for the footprint. Your net gain for 150 structure is 70, 75 parking spaces. So how many of these would you use in this Coolidge block redevelopment? And then how many would be left? We'd be back pretty quickly, I would argue, back to the point of going, hey, we have a parking demand problem, we have a parking capacity problem. And I would argue that we will be back to that situation because of that diagram that I showed you very quickly and before the maturity of the bond that we would have to underwrite to build a parking garage. So this just is not getting us in the right direction. So I think, so back to the question, I think I interrupted myself. The question I think we should be asking is something more along the lines of how do we build and maintain a system for mobility that can be sustained, a system that's scalable, that can be replicated, that prioritizes safe, convenient, healthy, affordable movement for people around our landscape, or something along those lines. I'm going to leave it there, but I am emphatically opposed to signing any letters of support or moving forward with any grants that are focused on increase in parking capacity. I do, however, I'm fully supportive of moving down the path of studying and providing feasibility and analysis on these other modes of transportation that reinforce and support the things that we've been doing rather than undercut them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Thanks, Mary. I'm in favor of this request. I'm going to go for it if the motion happens. As you can see, or as it's been explained, this doesn't commit us to anything. You know, the cost to the town is relatively cheap. The project, the loan deadlines are coming up. We talked about how times are wasted. I think it's important. This is a step that's not really gonna, the town, there's not a lot of financial impact. I think a feasibility study like this is always kind of helpful, and I think it starts the project moving. Whether we decide to do parking or do it in a certain way, I mean, those are questions for a different time. That's not the question before us. And so I understand the need, to reduce traffic. Parking's been a big issue. There are going to be people until advanced transit comes to West Hartford, my rural neighbors, are going to drive into town, and we're going to look for places to park because we want to be able to experience everything downtown has to offer as well. So I really think that in this case, I think this is a good step. Doesn't cost the town much, but it gets things moving in the right direction. We've talked a lot about it. I think everyone on the board tonight said they support the project. And this is a fairly easy step that we can take to show that support and get the wheels moving. So I will really think
And I just had a quick question, and maybe I didn't do the reading as well as I should have, but in seeking the approval from the select board, when it's the contribute staff time to the feasibility study, is that contribution come out of the Vermont Municipal Planning Grant? I'm wondering, what does contribute staff time? I mean, you're not doing this for love. Everybody needs a little bit of money. So I'm saying, where does that come, that aspect?
And I'm happy to answer.
Yeah.
Actually, if
Do you want to
to
talk more about that, Adam? Because it's part of your grant application.
So in some ways, the official recognition that the staff has been a partner in helping us compile some of the basic background info already. And I mean, frankly, we have utilized staff time already, but the more official recognition of that and approval of our ability to use a small portion of staff time going forward, the kind of magic thing that enables us to do is actually get matching funds for that. So that actually becomes an in-kind contribution to the project that we can have matched as a monetary contribution from Northern Borders Regional Commission. So that is what that represents. It's not subtractive from any of the grant funds. It's actually additive to the pool of money we can actually request from other sources.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, great question.
Ashley?
Yeah, I'm hoping to ask one last question. Adam, I'm curious about your response to some of the comments from the board members that are, taking point to Eric's presentation about this increasing demand for parking. So I'm curious about just your general thoughts. I'm sure that generally you agree with those concepts, but number one, is there any possible change to the wording or the scope of the application that you submit that might better match what we're asking for, is I guess question number one. And question number two is, if the board were to say, well, if we can't change the scope at all and we're only going to study more parking spots, and we don't approve the grant approval, what would your next move be?
Yeah, I think one thing we could do is just add in language into the grant applications to offer a little flexibility of how we are pursuing, call it solutions to mobility. As I mentioned before, there will be a period where we'll be drafting an RFP, and I think there'll be a lot of opportunity for collaboration there. I mean, two other partners that have been incredibly helpful through this process but are not here today are representatives from Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission and from Green Mountain Economic Development Corporation. And so we're working closely with them through this process as well. And I think that the actual drafting of what we're seeking to answer in these studies can continue to be a collaborative one. So we can kind of bake in some flexibility there. The actual application for the grant itself is something that we're going to be coming back in 2 weeks to seek your approval on that application. So basically, the timing of this became a little bit kind of non-ideal in that we had to submit a pre-application in partnership with Two Rivers for the Catalyst grant application. We did not find out whether or not we passed that first test, where they were going to invite us back to actually submit a full application until September 21st. The full application is due October 10th. So this is the only meeting of the select board between those two dates when we found out we could apply and when we have to submit that grant application, where we could come forward and seek your approval to at least apply for the planning grant. So we will be coming back again with the actual application, seeking your approval for that. And I would just say that our incentives are in line here to phrase an application for that grant in a way that would be approved by you all and not contentious, because if we don't have that grant, we don't have the other grant. But that is I'm helping here, but that is ultimately going to be a town application, and I'll be working closely with Lexi and Lori on that. That is their application. It's not my application, so it should represent what the town wants to see and what the town wants to answer. I'm just contributing my time to help with drafting and administrative burden related to that. So I guess my answer is that we can shift some language around a little bit. At the end of the day, this is a town application. I am encouraging the town to submit this application so we can study some of these challenges that are preventing solutions for the redevelopment of this site. But it is a town application, and so it's important that the town stands behind what we are applying for grant funding for, and that it's in line with the vision we have here that you all have. So hopefully that answers it.
Yeah.
Can't say it was in few words, but.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of respond, Eric, to your comments a bit. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness you're bringing to them. And I agree that it would definitely benefit the application to have a broadened language around downtown mobility. Something I didn't hear, from what you just spoke on was the other layer to this, which is that the purpose of the project, or one of the purposes, or one of the results of it, if it happens, is that we'll have more housing downtown. And that, we heard from John Hafner earlier, that is an urgent need in our town. And parking spaces might be a means to that end. And so, yes, it maybe undermines some of our goals or strategic vision around where we want to be with car use in the downtown area. But we have other goals as a town and as a select board, and increasing housing stock is something we hear about all the time from residents, and it's super important. So, I think just, in a side conversation, you mentioned the idea of just a gravel lot, a temporary parking solution. And I was like, that would be awesome. Something, so, who knows what the study will reveal if it happens, but something that's not a structure, it's not paid, it's just spaces. that don't change the nature of our infrastructure dramatically, but allow for needed housing development in our community.
Yeah, one, the original comment, you sparked another comment. I originally just wanted to say that, yes, I do think if we could make this grant request to be more broad around our needs as a community as far as modality or transportation, then like I would definitely be able to get behind that. But then I'm also thinking too, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember how many of these units would be affordable units, or if that's even been decided yet, or what that looks like. So I feel like that is the other hesitation I have, is that, well, I do think it's important that we have more housing. I also know that new construction is very expensive, and I don't think that we need more $2,000 studio apartments in our downtown area. And I know you're not just building studios, but just along the lines of affordability, like, yeah, I'm just, that's my thought process. Yeah.
And a couple of things I would say that, a lot of details still to be hashed out. I think in short, like affordable housing does not get built new unless there's public subsidy for it. And so the question I would put back to you all to reflect on is how much is the town willing to contribute? Because it'll be in direct relationship to what the rents end up being. And I'll also say that a parking garage, ahead of this and as part of my work exploring this, I've seen some great examples of parking garages that are built in such a way that they can be repurposed easily later into housing, into office spaces, into different things. And if they're built to accommodate that from the beginning, you're not necessarily spending more upfront, but you're offering a lot more flexibility on the back end. And so that kind of investment in dollars and embodied carbon can be put to other uses. And so there is some interesting opportunities there. In addition, parking garages can be wrapped in other uses, and it can become an opportunity to develop additional housing that almost wraps the parking garage, should that be a solution that is pursued. So there's some really great examples all around the Northeast of projects like that. Additional parking getting built, but also wrapped with housing or wrapped with other uses that are in support of a community plan.
Miranda, is there anybody online? Yes. Okay.
Maureen, go ahead.
Hi, a few things came to my mind. One is the 2 cars. It doesn't sound like the housing that will be put up there will be low income, which would have to be rent under $1,000, I would think. And if most people have a partner or whatever, they have 2 cars, you give them 1 parking space. What's happening up here, some of the overflow cars are just being parked at the park and ride. And I'm sure there's some down at the South Main Street where people who have 2 cars and they just leave their car down there because there isn't room for 2 cars where they live. And I thought, the vision, there's no vision in the town. And if there was one, it seems like it has been for non-vehicles, because zoning has ignored criteria for parking spaces for years. Hasn't been a priority for them. I mean, there's certain criteria for businesses that have to have a certain amount of spaces, and that, that's been all gone by the wayside. So, that's just sort of what I had my 2 cents, and thanks for listening.
Thanks, Marie.
Hi there, Becca White of White River Junction. Thank you so much for your presentation. I did just want to lift up and say, as a constituent who lives in downtown White River Junction, who's going to be very impacted by whatever happens down there, and who is a frequent bike rider, that I'm hoping, and pedestrian, that I'm hoping that whatever is designed, whatever the language is of your application or the study, that you, it sounds like, do basically what everyone else on the board has said so far, which is to prioritize walkability, safe access for bikers, so that we're not needing to add parking spaces that then create more demand but rather respond to how can someone safely get to this location, whether it be by car, whether it be by bus, whether it be via motorized scooter or e-bike. So all of that I would really like you to take into consideration. And one thing that has not come up, although this has been a very robust discussion and I appreciate it, is that there's also a lack of connectors to the downtown, to like the bus station, like the Greyhound bus station. And my expectation is whatever you do with this location, there might be a need to connect those. So if you have any way to promote that as you are opening your location, that would be helpful. And if this issue comes up in Senate Transportation, I'll tell them that Hartford's on the ball and that we're talking transportation demand management. So I really appreciate hearing this. And if you have any thoughts for grants that the state is offering or support, please let me know how I can assist.
Thanks, Vic. Anybody else? Before we, I will entertain the motion.
I guess real quick, I just wanted to see what Lexi's thoughts were on changing the language in the application to be more broadly.
I don't have a problem with that. I would have to run that by my boss, obviously. I am not the decision maker, but I think that all makes sense, and to look at it broader, and to not pigeonhole ourselves into one thing. But that could be part of this feasibility study, and you all would definitely be seeing the language that is submitted. So I don't anticipate that being a problem.
And one maybe comment I would say is 100% agree with that. A lot of the studies that have been done have kept that in mind. And a lot of those studies, like I can quote the 2017 parking study that said that if you apply all of these, parking mitigation, extension measures, all the different creative solutions to not building new parking and just better managing the parking, and you still end up seeing the developments that you want to see through the TIF district investments, you will still need a net new development of 300 parking spaces. And so that 2017 parking study did explore a lot of alternative strategies, but did also ultimately say that you will need to build more parking eventually. Bad phrasing, but this has been studied, and we can continue to study it. We want to make sure that the deliverables here are actionable at the end of the day so that we can move something forward. But I also think there's a lot of great precedent that has been explored in all the other solutions available. But I'm supportive of shifting the language, just to echo what Lexi shared.
Ashley.
Just to tie that all up, the facilitator in me really wants to close the loop here. So Lexi, you're gonna talk with your department about what we're all discussing.
No doubt have Lori watch this
Yeah,
portion of the
Lori,
meeting.
good to see you. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sure by the time you're watching this, it's tomorrow. And then John, I'm just wondering then, before, I don't want to waste anyone's time. And so I'm wondering if there can be a collaboration facilitated by you, John, between planning and someone here that maybe has the capacity to touch base on this between now and the next meeting when you bring the application, so that we can kind of have an eye on where it's going. And if Lori has questions, or if anyone on planning has questions, we can answer it, or at least one of us can discuss it preemptively before coming before the board again in 2 weeks.
That puts an awful lot of power in one particular select board member's hands to presume to speak for the whole board. I'd be concerned about that.
Right, yeah, that's a good point. Okay, I'm just trying to find a solution that doesn't mean that you come back in 2 weeks and we say we're not happy with it, and then everyone gets mad at us because
You all have the full power to do that. Lori already told me in 2 weeks, you all could say no at that point, even if you said yes tonight. So
is why I'm
I know.
Wondering if there's
for that effort. Yeah.
I mean, do you have a sense, Lexi, if I may, like how long it might? I mean, could we have the application, a draft, a week in advance or something as a whole board?
So the only thing is Lori is out this entire week.
Oh
yeah.
So I would feel really hesitant giving you a draft that she hasn't really looked at.
End of day Monday.
Yeah.
No.
So
I'll ask her about it at her daughter's wedding.
Yes.
she would love that.
That's why she's out.
Yeah. So
okay. Well,
yeah. I do expect overall that this would not be an issue too.
Yeah.
I mean, Lori has talked about herself like modular parking decks, things that you are looking toward the future and not putting yourself in a permanent situation where 10 years down the road, you may not need that parking. So I don't anticipate it being a problem.
Yeah, I mean, and Eric, you drafted some language of, so maybe you could at least send that to us and let's see.
Yeah.
Thank you for teeing that up. I mean, I'm happy to read something right now, and we can poke at it a little bit. And thank you for your earlier comment reminding me, I got a little carried away with my being emphatic, but I think bridge park, what I called it was bridge parking, right? So recognizing that we have immediate needs, but we also have vision, and the two aren't necessarily, it's like being on a construction site, having to spend time setting up a tent or something, or some sort of temporary work location. It's not really what you want to be spending your time on, but you kind of have to sometimes. And so, yeah, some like a minimal investment in surface level parking would not be intolerable to me. It would be, it keeps the overall, the larger goal in mind. And so with that said, here's what I drafted. The original suggested motion was pursue submission of a Vermont or VPMG application for $30,000 to fund approximately half the feasibility study, so on and so forth, approved at a future select board meeting prior to submittal. And then I added that the project scope for the application will focus primarily on reducing car dependency in downtown White River Junction by assessing enhancement to alternative modes of mobility, including but not limited to active mobility, that is walking and biking, transit, for example, conventional route-based transit and microtransit or shuttles in the downtown area, and car sharing. And secondarily, the project will include assessing options for increasing surface level parking capacity. So the wording of that is far from perfect, and I'm happy to entertain suggested edits or whatever, but that's kind of where I was thinking. And I think it basically rewrites everything that you sent earlier to the board. Like say every part of the VPMG grant section 2.4 had parking in it. And that so that all has to be changed, and I think that the primary focus should be this. The secondary focus should be secondary parking as a sort of stopgap or bridge measure. That's my last 2-cent piece.
Mike,
my preference is that language that planning developer put in the grant, we get the agenda sent to us before the meeting. We'll actually approve the final language. So I think we'll have a chance to see it. I'd be more comfortable making changes after I see what is originally written. There's sort of speculating here what it's going to be about. So that's I see no real reason that the part will be our normal procedure of they're going to bring the language to us, and we take the time that we need to come up with language comfortable. I'd just like to see it first.
When is the application deadline?
I was just about to chime in. I believe it's
November
3rd. November 3rd.
So the thing is, there are 2 more meetings besides this one in advance of that. It is what is today?
October 14th,
the 14th and the
28th.
28th. So we could certainly have a draft as good as possible by the 14th one and get your all's feedback and then come back on the 28th. The reason we expedited it some is because I will be out for my wedding for half a month. So I will be gone on the 28th, but I'm sure Lori would be happy to come back and do see the final polished version getting submitted on November 3rd.
so I will.
Can I just wrap that loop up?
Sure.
Yeah. So then I think maybe I'm okay with what Mike is suggesting, which is that we don't necessarily change the we don't make a motion to change language right now. But I do feel that if Eric can share the language that I really like the way that we're flipping it as prioritizing non-vehicle parking and making that the secondary. If you can at least make sure that that gets sent to
By all
John to
means.
distribute so that they
Happy
know
Happy to get it into the planning department's hands.
that that's what we're aiming for, then I'm comfortable kind of moving forward. to the next step.
Do we know that's what the consensus of the board is? I haven't counted the votes
Yeah,
myself.
I have to say, like, Eric, I love your thoughts. I think you're right on a lot of this stuff. But the last thing I want to do is kill a grant. And I really feel like we need to honor their expertise on crafting a grant that's successful. And so if we encumber it with this visionary language, it may be a deterrent to securing the grant. So I think we just have to trust the process, trust what they present to us, and try and move forward and make this work.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, Eric?
I don't disagree, Tim, and I think that's probably good thinking. I didn't really want to have to be writing this because I am not an expert in this area, and we do have expertise. But what I really wanted to do is and getting back to John's point about sort of sensing whether the board is in sync on something or supports it, and effectively communicate that to the staff so that we don't find in the next cycle, the next select board meeting, that they didn't quite capture what we said or whatever, and then we're going through this again. So I was trying to do whatever I could to sort of put something out there so that we could beat it up a little bit and send a really clear signal. And that's what this is about, just sending that signal so that we can be on the right page.
I'll entertain a motion.
Is there a motion required?
Well, we are seeking approval from the select board to. Can we make
To
that-
proceed with the preparation of a grant application for your subsequent review, revision, and approval.
Right.
And then
Okay.
number
And the letter.
two.
And a letter
of
of
support would be
Right.
appreciated, though not required.
Fabulous grant.
Were we
Ready
trying to get
make
it?
the motion?
Well, I thought we were trying to get a sense of where the board was landing on if we want to go in the direction of making the first priority of the study not based on parking, but based on other modes of transportation, or if we want to allow planning to go forward as they kind of presented to us with parking as the primary scope of the study. I thought that's what we were just.
Yeah, and then I gathered from the following discussion that people seem to be understanding that we'll have 2 more meetings before a final decision needs to be made before the November 3rd deadline, which will give an opportunity for staff to review these comments, generate an initial draft, which you could then review at the 14th and massage as you wish, depending on how many people are in favor of certain language or other approaches. So I think maybe what we're only asking for is a modest ask tonight, which is a sense that the board would like the staff to work on preparing an application for your review and consideration at these coming meetings.
If I may, Madam Chair, I think what Ashley was asking for is maybe a straw poll, just to get a flavor or a sense of how many board members support prioritizing the non-car alternatives, so that when the staff does sit down, they kind of have a strong sense of the direction that we're moving, right? So it just sets up the other parts of it.
Probably couldn't hurt to have that if the board's willing to show their cards tonight.
Yeah. So if that's where people are at, I can go with that. I think there's could be a way to have broad language that includes looking at all options without necessarily creating like a prioritization hierarchy, because the other factor that's like really prominent is like investment is a huge part of feasibility of this happening, and investment at the level, so we're not asking taxpayers to shoulder a huge burden of cost for this to happen, is going to require a lot of private investment. So, that's just very real. And like what Adam said, that they want 1.5 spaces typically. We don't even allow that. So,
But not in
he's
Boston.
already gonna have to like negotiate with them to be like the town only allows one, So anyway, that's just that's another piece of the feasibility that is just like a make or break. Like we can't do it without investment. So, I'm all support of broadening the language. If we want to prioritize it to really make clear that we're super pro-green here, that's cool. But I think this other piece is like an important element of feasibility.
I think you need the language before you get broaden it. You know what I mean? Like, they've heard what we said tonight. They understand that there's an interest in, maybe being broader than just parking. They're gonna get it to us in advance of when we vote on it, we have a chance to think about what we might want to add or not. I mean, I think it's an opportunity for them to come back to us, then we can look at it and, decide if we want it. Like, it's just the regular process. They bring something to us, we review it. We want to change it, we change it,
And may I ask, Mike,
Ashley?
and are you, I guess, but we're trying to get a sense of the vision that we have. And so are you in support of moving it more towards public transportation, moving the scope of the study towards that, or more towards parking, or you just don't have an opinion until you read exactly what?
I'd like to see the language. Also, as I said before, I support this idea. I'm gonna vote for it, no matter what the ultimate language is, unless it's incredibly objectionable. And I think it's good to get the wheels moving. And I think we need to see what they come up with before we can actually do that,
I don't think that really gives a clear answer to staff, but I hope it's something.
I don't know, just parking or broader. I don't know, just sitting here, what I want to do, I want to see the language. I think they're going to come back with something that's broader than just parking based on everything we said. And I'd like to see that.
Okay,
Awesome.
so do we have a motion? I'm back to base one.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Eric.
I would make the second motion, which is to move that the board approve that the town staff submit a letter of support for the project's Catalyst grant feasibility application. If the project scope of the application will focus primarily on reducing car dependency in downtown White River Junction by assessing enhancements to alternative modes of mobility, including but not limited to active mobility, transit, car sharing, and secondarily, the project scope will include assessing options for increasing surface level parking capacity.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Is
I
there,
just want to object to writing stuff, during the motion. Yeah. I think it's unusual. It's not what we've done in the past.
and this only, as I understand it, addresses the issue of the letter of
Right.
support, correct?
Well, if there are objections, I'm happy to hear the motion and then amend it.
Yeah, I think we're getting bogged down, honestly. I think we should really try and just click through the two elements and let them do the work. And not worry about the nuances. I think we should worry about that later.
Okay, so then I will, we'll vote. I think it'd probably be best to vote individually at this point. So let's start with Ashley.
Aye.
Tim?
Nay.
Mike?
Nay.
Ida?
Aye.
Randall?
Aye.
And I'll vote nay. So the ayes have it. So does this give you something to work with?
It does with respect to a letter of support
Right,
for an application that you haven't yet approved staff working on
right,
for the next meeting.
right.
And it'd be helpful if we had a motion.
Yes.
Chair, I move that the select board direct the town manager to pursue submission of a VMPG application for $30,000 to fund approximately half of the feasibility study, with the understanding that the VMPG application will be approved at a future select board meeting prior to submission.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes. We
Thank
still
you.
have to worry
Thank you,
about the staff
Adam.
time.
Thank you.
That was a lot.
Robust conversation.
We like your deed.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you really. And thank you, Lexi.
Yes, thank
so
you.
much.
And thank you, Jesse and John, for being here.
Wait, who made that one? Mike made it, Ida seconded.
Yes. Okay, so are you still awake, Gail?
We should arrange the agenda geographically so the people that live furthest away get to go first.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm hopeful that this will be 5 minutes or less, because I know all of you did your homework and read the agenda memo. So just for those of you board members that are new, every year, the finance director will come in front of you and ask for your approval on existing purchase orders that we have that we need to carry into the next fiscal year. And in my memo that I put together, you can see over the past few years, it's reduced significantly. That's a good thing because it means that we have staff that are executing a lot of the larger projects that are multi-year projects. So this year, I'm asking the board to approve the 2025 encumbrance request totaling $670,016.44, which is broke down between fiscal year 25 and prior years. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question similar to one that we heard from a resident. And my understanding was that an encumbrance, I had to look this up because I don't know accounting or finance, but and what I found was a definition that said encumbrance is a specific amount of money within a budget designated for approved purchase or contractual obligations that signifies future payments. And so, you know, right, the very first line, the very first item was the select board recruitment and training, where we would, if we approved this, we would be encumbering $18,000+. But do we have contracts or approved purchase orders or anything like that? I'm confused. Maybe in municipal context, the meaning of an encumbrance is different or somehow.
So the select board over the past couple of years has requested that they carry that funding for anticipated training that the board will be having. And I believe in the 26 budget, I don't believe that they budgeted anything. And that was one of the reasons why they've been carrying the encumbrances specifically for training for the board. I'm not aware of any existing contracts that the board may have for training, but it's my understanding that there's a very strong request by the board to continue to carry that funding for board specific training. If that's the case that the board doesn't want to, I'm happy to deduct it off from there and we can move on.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily suggesting that we deduct it. I'm just trying to understand. So that's one example where I have
That is one example. It's a separate example. All the other ones that are on here have contracts. Most of these have already been executed. So even if you say no tonight, we would have to find money out of the 26 budget to pay back.
Okay, that's a perfect answer to the question, really, which was for all of the other ones that I don't have insight into.
Correct.
There are contracts, there are obligations, and so that fits with the definition. And so for the board one, yeah, if there were no monies budgeted in the past cycle and we said wipe the encumbrance, then we'd have nothing between now and the next fiscal year, which seems inconvenient. I don't know that we even have the capacity to spend 18 grand. Maybe we do. Is it possible to, I mean, maybe it's, I'm just splitting hairs here, but is it possible to encumber part of it and not part of it?
You can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Eric, if I could add to that, I think I that was a great clarification between an encumbrance and what I might call an obligation. So I think that I understand this better now. I often get confused between unexpended funds, reserve funds, and encumbrances, but That's my ignorance, but I would suggest that the only adjustment to your presentation tonight would be that perhaps we reduce that anticipated recruitment training need amongst us to 10,000 or some like reduced number. I think that would be a good effort to say, yeah, we'd like to do some training next year, but we wouldn't anticipate gobbling up 18,000 to sort of be conservative in that approach.
And a follow-up question might be, what would happen to the funds if partially unencumbered? Would those simply migrate to the unassigned fund?
Correct. I have a question of how much of that is grant funding that is restricted and needs to be spent?
There's none of it that's restricted.
Okay, if there are no other questions and there's no questions online, then I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Miranda?
I move that the select board approve the 2025 encumbrance request as presented of $670,000, $616,044 with a modification of the select board recruitment and training being reduced to $10,000. So whatever that math is, I did not do it, but that is the motion.
Should we change?
I would allow Gail to change
Yeah,
that number.
you should change, yes.
So that goes to 660,016.
I don't have a calculator.
If that's
in
if
front
you're
of me.
reducing it by 10,000.
Oh.
If you're
Oh,
reducing
right.
it to 10,000, you're losing 8,858.77.
Have a calculator real quick or should
Hold
we
on,
just?
I
Yeah.
got it.
If anybody can do that in their head, I'm impressed.
My daughter is here.
We might have a men's
I think
situation.
she sits in the classroom all day doing that.
Okay.
So she's.
I got it.
Just do it.
I got it. Okay, so
You
I
wanna start
move.
all over again?
I will. I move that the select board approve the 2025 encumbrance request as modified, as amended to of $661,157.67, which is encompassing reducing the select board recruitment and training by $8,858.77, leaving it at $10,000.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay,
Miranda, can you just read that one more time just to make sure I have the right number?
Yes, my number was. Sorry.
That's okay.
661.
Okay, $661,157.67.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Gail.
Thanks and good night.
Your turn, Rick.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good
Are you
evening.
ready? I think this one will be pretty simple.
That's what we thought when you were here last time, right?
Yeah, right, yeah. I think I said the same thing last time too. So I was here about 6 weeks ago with this, basically the same errors and omissions certificate. There are two issues from that certificate. The first one is that I failed to mention that that certificate had to be signed by the board. So that's issue number one tonight. So I redid the certificate. There's a change to the value on one of the three properties. The other two remain the same. So I don't think you need to do a motion for those two, and we'll get into all that in a minute. But there is, I believe, the certificate in your signature packet to be signed. So I want to make sure that that gets signed tonight. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is on the Nancy Scott property, span number 15255. We had reduced the, I don't have the form from the last meeting, but the issue was that we reduced the value of the cell tower on that property. So we thought that there were 4 tenants on that tower. It turned out there's only one, so we reduced the value. So on the cell towers, there are actually two items that we value. There's the tower itself, and then the value of that tower is dependent on the number of tenants on the tower. There's also a value assigned to the land. When the land is leased, when there's a lease on private property for the land where the cell tower is sited, there's a value assigned to that land, because usually there's a lease agreement and the property owner it's typically around $3,000 a month in income on that lease. So that income is capitalized, and then it obviously increases the land value. And then the landowner passes that additional tax on to the cell tower owner. So two things came to my attention after the last meeting. One is that the cell tower, I knew it was owned by Vermont Telephone. I learned that under Vermont statutes, the towers owned by the telephone company are exempt from local property taxes. They're taxed at the state level. So we have to delete the value that was assigned to that tower under our assessed values. The second item is, as I mentioned, the land gets valued and assessed based on the income that it's generating. On this property is an unusual or atypical situation where the property owner is getting no income. There was an agreement, an easement agreement that she signed, and she received some compensation for that easement agreement, but there's no income generated, monthly income on that property. So since there's no income, there's no additional value assigned to that land. So I'm looking to remove the additional value to the land and remove the value for the cell tower. So the change in assessed value, if you see on the form, goes from $2,292,200 down to $420,600. So that $420,000 value is just her land and her house, as though the cell tower didn't even exist on the property. So it's a difference of $1,871,600. There is a motion for that on should be on your document. I'm not sure. I think it's on page 2 of the memo, maybe. My printouts are messed up here. And as I mentioned, on the other two properties, nothing's changed on those. That's the Railroad Row LLC and the Bridge and Main Housing LP. There's no changes to those. But I put those on the certificate with the Scott property because the prior certificate was never signed. So I don't believe you need a motion on those because the motion was already taken at the last meeting.
It's just the Nancy Scott one.
Right.
I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Ashley?
I move that we approve an additional adjustment in assessed value for 235 Fairbanks Turn, span number 28590152255, so that the assessed value is reduced from the original 2025 value of $2,292,200 to $420,600.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, Eric, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
7-0.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
I
Thanks for.
think that's it this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Commission reports. I'll start with Eric.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You heard from the Historic Preservation Commission tonight, so I'm not going to add to that. And the Conservation Commission didn't have quorum, so they didn't have a meeting last time. So that's where we are. Thank you.
Miranda. Ida.
Yes, Energy Commission met last week. Just a few updates on, they had the Electric Vehicle Expo, which was a big success. They actually had a surplus from their sponsorship. So there was discussion about using some of that for bike lock infrastructure downtown as something that they're considering. Lebanon, who's also collaborated on the event, is sort of going further and doing like, looking at about electric bike charging stations. I think Hartford folks kind of agreed that we just need the basics but to start. So that's one thing that they're thinking about. They, as we heard earlier, the styrofoam recycling is this Saturday, the window dressers workshop. I'm sure that they would still welcome volunteers. It starts this weekend. If people want to get involved with that event, contact me or John and we'll get you the link to volunteer. And yeah, I did make them talk about recycling with me a little bit, even though they're reluctant to wade into that. So varying, as we heard from John, you know, everyone has a different point of view. There were some folks that were interested in the idea of like centralized recycling collection, although we acknowledge there are challenges with that, like contamination and things like that. You know, it's a few satellite locations for recycling collection. So yeah, that's it.
Mike?
No reports.
All right. Tim?
I have no reports.
Ashley?
No reports.
And I went to the Bugby Building Committee meeting and we kind of figured out that this was, looking at the feasibility study was just too huge. And so we felt that we actually had to decide how to prioritize and that we don't have enough time this year to make the kind of decisions that require really long-term thought process and discussion. So what happened was we formed two small groups. Small group number one made up of Mark Bradley, Sean Lacey, Tom Peltier, and Linda Simon Miller to answer the questions, what do we need to do first so that we can get ready for the budget? And B, what needs to happen now regarding compliance and decommissioning, because there's some equipment that needs to be decommissioned. They're gonna meet once and then come back to our next full meeting. Small group number two made up of Mark Bradley, Sue Buckles, Emily Santa, and Scott Farnsworth to answer the following. How do we link the feasibility study to the needs of Bugby's building programs? That was not tackled during the feasibility study. And B, how will the site impact the operating budget of Bugby? And again, they're gonna meet once and then come together. We decided we cannot move on funding and financing until we answer the above questions for the two groups. And at the next meeting, Mark Bradley was gonna invite the architects of the feasibility study to our next meeting so that we can clarify data that we need to move forward. Next meeting will be October 9th at 4:30 at Bugby. Okay, so consent agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mike?
I move that the select board approve payroll ending 9/27/25, approve AP manifest of 9/26/25 and 10/2/25, approve meeting minutes of 9/16/25, with future meetings approved for 10/3/25, the outreach event 10/14/25 and 10/28/25.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Tim? Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So 7-0. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Eric. Is there a second?
Oh, yeah.
Miranda second, or was it I couldn't hear.
It's Miranda.
Miranda, okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, 7-0. Thank